Yeah, very good morning to you. There's Kendall, myself, and Elvis. We're with you for the next 3 hours until, well, midday, bringing you, well, it's a sad day, really, today for South Africa. Obviously, it's been a difficult week, I think. Difficult news week.
Been a very difficult news week, especially for women and children in this country. Even the president, Jacob Zuma, was yesterday in Elvis River, and he says women and child abuse has really reached crisis proportions in this country, and we need to do something about it.
Yeah, we all have to get involved to fight the scourge. There's no doubt about that. So we thought we'd ask you the question, both men and women, Elvis, not just men. Make it everybody. What are you doing to stop gender violence?
What are you doing? That's the question. You can let us know on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom as well as on the Facebook page. But we're also conducting a poll on social media and the rise of the hashtag activism. But before we get there, let's just take a quick look at some of the comments, Evan.
Yeah, Alex tweets us, he says, Newsroom, respect my family and all women in my community in general at Riverside View. Wonderful, Alex. We love your work. Keep it going, my friend.
Alex Matapo says, the perpetrators, they don't care about what is said about them. For us, good man is working.
Yeah, you got to do more than just work. You have to look after the children because that's what builds a great country. Collins Ntelele says, encouraging those likely to be the victims to come out and speak when early signs of abuse manifest. Collins, that's at the heart of it, my friend. I spoke to some people on social media about exactly that. It's not only physical abuse. As soon as you start to be mentally abused, then you know it's a slippery slope from there, and you have to kind of get on top of it.
And you would know that most of these cases are underreported. Some suggest, and of course we need to get those out and speak about them. And that's why we're talking to you about it, because we want you to engage with us. That's why the hashtag, because there's this thing about hashtag activism here.
Yeah, Men Are Trash has caused all the sensation this week, of course, when it came out. Apparently it was Bob Mabena who started the Men Are Trash hashtag. I'd like to speak to Bob at some point about that and what he meant and what he sort of looked at and the insights, and because it's really caused a division in South Africa. If you look at the way that people are polling, there is a definite divide. I think on Wednesday we had a similar poll, and it was 50-50 spot. So it shows that it's something that divided opinion completely.
But there's also the flip side of the coin, because there's some men that has come out and says, listen, it's not in my name.
Yeah.
And that's why they're going to walk tomorrow. Siafana says, no, it's not working, because we still heard the stories of women abuse. So these hashtag campaigns are not working.
Elvis, we are not walking tomorrow, we are marching to Pretoria.
Oh yes, we are
marching against abuse, all the good men. Onuko Christian says, Newsroom, it is pathetic that South African men are on the rogue of women killing. It is, Onuke, no doubt.
Sani says, it's complicated. It works for dialogue and awareness. It has no tangible outcomes, though, but neither does striking in South Africa work.
Awesomeness got a point, interesting point actually. Lee D says Newsroom absolutely does. It activates greater awareness and conversations around critical issues affecting society today. Thank you, Lee. It's nice to know that.
Nahasa says, some real men do understand the slogan, hashtag not in my name.
Thank you, Lechasa. Fantastic to hear that kind of positive outlook. Yes, the time has come for all of us to either come together or do together to deal with this problem, because Elvis, it's not happening out there, it's happening in our homes, in our own homes.
And it's all about introspection for our society as a whole. So that's what we got to look at. Talk to us, relate to us, Twitter handle as well as on the Facebook page. But let's now start our business of the day. Take a look at the news headlines. 22-year-old Karabo Mokoena, whose burned body was discovered in the veld north of Johannesburg, will be laid to rest at the West Park Cemetery this morning. 3 men are expected to appear in Protea Magistrates Court in connection with the killing of 2 women in Soweto last week. And of course, the South African Communist Party will have a national Imbizo aimed at finding solutions to different challenges facing the country. Those are your headlines, but before we get to the news, the weekend is ahead with your sports. Let's find out from Kendall. Makamate.
Quite a lot happening in the world of sports. So we've come up with a great week where we'll find a PSL champion finally, but we've also got the Kings on the rise over the weekend in Super Rugby.
Yeah, I think it's one of the positive stories to come out of this year's rugby. I think the Kings, they play a great brand, very watchable. Some people say, Cheeky Watson is gone. Maybe that's the reason.
Well, it seems like they're playing more cheeky these days.
They're playing more cheekily
They
these
play
days.
more cheeky, I agree.
Without
They
cheeky.
play a little bit more
Nice
cheeky.
one. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
We kept up the intensity from last week. We put the win behind us, and we just focused on what's needed to be done against the Brumbies.
The Southern Kings are the revelation of the latter stages of Super Rugby 2017. They seek to make it 4 wins in a row when they meet the Brumbies this weekend.
And he keeps that streak alive. Novak Djokovic is in his 11th straight quarterfinal here in Rome.
6-4, 6-4.
Former world #1 Novak Djokovic looks more like his old self as he dispatches Roberto Bautista Agut in straight sets in Rome. And soon to retire, Germany and Bayern Munich captain Philipp Lahm is set to play his last match for his beloved Bayern this weekend. Now, all this in more detail I've got for you later on at 10:40. Be sure to stay with us because Elvis has got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Focus this morning on the 22-year-old Karabo Mokoena, whose burnt body was discovered in the veld north of Johannesburg, and she will be buried at the West Park Cemetery today. Mokoena had been reported missing by her family last month. Her boyfriend, Sandile Mantsu, has been charged with her murder and defeating the ends of justice. Mourners at her memorial service earlier this week pleaded with men to stand up and protect women and children. Meanwhile, 3 men arrested in connection with the Soweto murders of 24-year-old Poppy Gumede and 28-year-old Bongeka Pungula will appear in the Protea Magistrates Court today. Gumede's body was found in Naledi on Friday and Pungula's the following day in Tladi. The duo from KwaZulu-Natal were living together in Zola. Police are still looking for the killers of the 2 other women who were killed and dumped in Soweto over the weekend. On Sunday, Baratu Molloy's body was discovered in Naledi. She had been stoned, allegedly raped and burnt. Another victim's body was also found in Mofolo. The police minister for Kilambulula has promised the community of Elsies River in the Western Cape a satellite police station. He was speaking at last night's memorial service for 43-year-old Courtney Peters, who was murdered earlier this month.
A community united until the bitter end. When 3-year-old Courtney Peters went missing, this community stood up and searched for the toddler day and night. Courtney's body was found dug up in a shallow grave not too far from her home. The alleged perpetrator is known to the community. Once again, this community has united to say justice for Courtney.
So we want to beg General Jula and this force, when we come to the police station with the case, please, whether we poor, acknowledge us, take our case, accept our case.
Police have been blamed for shoddy work and for stifling investigations. The Minister of Police reassured residents that the Elsies River police station will never be the same again.
When I come to Elsies River, there must be a change. Now, the community told me, yeah, they need a satellite police station. And then he agreed to me that we will bring a satellite police station in Elsies River.
The toddler will be laid to rest on Saturday. Nomao Tusolwandle, SABC News, Elsies River.
Meanwhile, President Jacob Zuma has called on South Africans to fight against women and child abuse. After visiting the family of Courtney Peters in Elsies River in the Western Cape, he said that murders of women and children in the country had reached crisis levels.
I hope the country will realize that on the issue of crime, we're facing a serious matter. There is negativity in the country. There is something that has gone wrong that we need to do as the society. I don't know whether we need to introduce more harsher laws or change the laws. This, I think, we must discuss.
Yes.
It's a crisis in the country. The manner in which women and children are being killed. I've been told that just here in the Western Cape, about 19 children have been killed since the beginning of the year.
Yes.
Now, this is unacceptable.
Meanwhile, the Minister of Women and Children in the presidency, Susan Shabangu, has called on all South Africans to play their role in stopping gender-based violence. Shabangu said this during an interview with SABC News this morning at Bara taxi rank in Soweto, where she's trying to raise awareness against the recent incidents of female killings.
It will never be visible enough because visibility must go with change, must go with effect and impact on the women. So for now, the mere effect of that, we continue to see the scourge increasing and becoming a crisis, a national crisis for us. But also what is key, as Colleen has indicated, we've got to start working closer together. We must move away from our little territories, and collectively we can make a difference. And I think that does not even require monies, but it requires our commitment, our efforts, but also reaching out to the women.
I wanted to say, so what do we do as a worried woman staying in South Africa, not feeling safe? What do I need to do? How do I contribute towards finding a solution to this problem?
First, we need to make sure we reach out to those who are near to us. We need to make sure that our communities are able to embrace all women and make sure that women are respected in their own little spaces. And as soon as we start doing that, then it can expand that. Because the first problem, it starts with women who are not recognized within their communities. I'll make an example. Last week, Thursday, in Rondebelt, Boksburg, a woman was killed. Neighbors were peeping through the windows as she was screaming, being pulled by these criminals out of her own house, being shot at. Before she could be shot at, neighbors were watching through the windows. It was at night. No one called the police, but watching. That's the space which we've got to close in and close ranks in making sure that the first point of call, we have Ubuntu, we can reach out. We don't ask, what has she done? We are able to show sympathy and make sure that we reach out to those women. She's there today, a mother of two, because community, the immediate neighbors were watching, peeping through the windows. That's the first point of call. Our consciousness, our conscience must speak to us that we are people, and the person where this particular activity is happening is another human being.
Minister in the presidency focusing on women, Susan Shabangu there at the taxi rank this morning. Now, the recent spate of killing of women and gender-based violence has received much attention in the country. Now, this morning, our SABC News reporter Griselda, she is visiting Baragwanath taxi rank there in Soweto. And a very good morning to you, Griselda, and welcome. Can you tell us what is the mood like at the Soweto taxi rank there at Baragwanath?
Well, Elvis, we decided to take this conversation to the streets. You'd recall, of course, many South Africans up in arms about the spate of killing of women. Many would say it's been going on, but the focus was not as much on the scourge, but of course, again, cast into the spotlight as a result of the brutal killing of Karabo Mokoena, who is going to be buried today, allegedly killed by her boyfriend, brutally so, and found dumped in Lyndhurst here in Johannesburg. And there's been a massive outcry. We've seen quite a number of other incidents also come under the spotlight. We've seen 2 other girls as well in Tladi, as well here in Soweto. Other incidents that have really raised eyebrows about starting a conversation once again about what the scourge is, why the violence continues against women, why the brutality has become so violent. And South Africans are certainly saying, while this conversation needs to be held with government, South Africans on their own, ordinary women and men such as yourself and myself, need to have this discussion. So this morning, together with our sister program Morning Live, we've been engaging with government officials as well as ordinary people. You'd know where we're broadcasting from this morning. This is the biggest taxi rank in Soweto. So we decided to come and engage with people about what they think the possible solutions will be to try and get rid of the scourge of violence that we're seeing in South Africa. So I decided this morning to jump into a taxi. Now, the reason why I decided to do this there, Elvis, is because you'd recall, linked to much of this violence as well is also the taxi rape saga that we've seen happen here in Johannesburg. And we understand from police this morning that the latest incident that was reported not too far from here at the Diepkloof Hostel. A lady was abducted outside the Diepkloof Hostel last week and taken to an undisclosed location, and that's where she was raped. When we asked police about whether the infamous quantum that has been implicated in these taxi rapes has been found, police said the investigations pertaining to that are still continuing, but the incidents themselves certainly seem to be continuing. So I'm deciding this morning to have a round table, if I may, with taxi drivers about how perhaps commuters again can feel safe once more. Thousands, if not millions, of commuters rely on public transport in South Africa to get to and from work. And just lastly there, the statistics as well, Elvis. If you look at the statistics, for example, the 2016 Stats SA statistics indicating that more than 73% of women, in comparison to over 23%, have experienced sexual violence. And this was just in the 2014-2015 financial year. And if you look at as well, 1 in every 5 women has experienced physical violence by their partner. And this has really come into the spotlight again. You know, the femicide issue is something that certainly needs to be debated. Let me join now Ntate Bethwell Ndlovu, who is with the National Taxi Alliance here in Bara City. Ntate Bethwell, thank you very much for your time. Ntate, we've seen the scourge of violence against women, and this not taking away as well from the taxi-related rapes that we have seen. What have you done as the National Taxi Alliance to ensure that all of this stops? We've spoken to a number of commuters who are living in fear.
Ngibonge siswami entweni eziningi ezenzakalayo emateksini mina ngiyakhala kakhulu ngayo imboni yethu ngoba izinto eziningi maziza zikhonjwa khona emateksini ku National Taxi Alliance naku UTAF nako Santaco sesinezindlela eziningi esizamayo ukuthi abantu abagibela amateksi ababe nezindlela abazoyibona ukuthi amateksi awabe nezitika umuntu ayazi itaxi ayigibelayo ukuthi itaxi ngabe yase Bara City noma iSTS noma iwhat. Then after that ngiyacela futhi kakhulu kuba abazali beingane ngoba izinto eziningi uma mazenzeka kukhonjwa kakhulu ngapha emateksi namateksi athutha wonke inhlobo yomuntu eSouth Africa. Kodwa inkinga eziningi ezenzakalayo mina ezinjenge rank manager ku Bara City ngiye ngibone abantwana abaningi abayi ezikolweni bona laba amantombazana ubathola becasha emva kwamasithi ezimoto behamba naba odriver bezimoto. The next mabelo ke bethola lezi zinto abayinikezwa yilaba bashayeli bagcina sebe ama victim ukuthi benzekale ba rage. But abantu izinto eziningi uma zenzeka zenziwa ukuthi abazali abomama abayikhuzi nazo izingane maloke zizana ama present ezindlini zigqoka impahla ezi expensive abazali abayibuza ukuthi lezi zinto zibuya kuphi.
Baba Bethwell, we can't place that solely on young girls and the behavior that you are talking about. What are you doing as the National Taxi Alliance to ensure that your taxis are more visible? If somebody is standing at the corner of a street at 6:30 in the morning, they hardly look at a taxi to see if it is registered, if it has a sticker. They are in a hurry to get to work. What are you doing to ensure that these incidents come to an end? An incident just reported last week was right here on your doorstep at the Diepkloof Hostel.
Ngibonge siswami engicabangela ukuthi ezinjengasemateksini kuwonke umhlaba ngicabangela ukuthi abantu abagibelayo ekseni kakhulu kufuneka imoto lezi ama squad cars ezimonitor imisebenzi akube izona evuka kuqala kube ne list ekwaziwayo ukuthi imoto uma isuka ku point 1 or ku point A ilayisha iya edropini akube khona abantu abamonitor abantu abagibele ekseni ngaso sonke isikhathi ngoba umuntu uma ephuma endlini eyogibela itaxi kumnyama ngeke omunye akhone sinabogogo sinabosisi abanye abangakwazi nokubhala ezinye izinto ngeke akhone nokubhala ukuthi number plate yemoto into enjani kodwa akakwazi nomuntu uku describe imoto nomshayeli abantu baphatha amafoni ngiyacela kuhulumeni amafoni la aphathwa abantu akuvumeleke ukuthi abantu bawasebenzise nase kuma number plate umuntu angasabi ukushithi number plate yemoto azoyigibela because usuka protect ngiyabonga.
Bethwell Ndlovu there, who is with the National Taxi Alliance, saying that he does understand that much of the responsibility is on the taxi associations, saying that, you know, commuters shouldn't also, if they feel unsafe or if they do not believe that the taxi that is approaching them, which they want to get on to take them to work, perhaps they should also shoot the number plate, and they will try and ensure that in terms of visibility with the stickers that are on the taxis, that commuters should really look out for that as well. It's quite difficult, as I put it to him, when in the morning you are rushing to work and you're trying to get to your destination, and these stickers, commuters are too late and are not able to look at these stickers and instead believe that the taxi that they're getting into is going to take them to their destination. But we'll continue with this discussion. Masize kuwe baba. Let's speak to one of the taxi drivers as well. Isinjani manje baba i-relationship phakathi kwenu no mama abagibela lama taxi la, because bathi ngokubona bayesaba ngenxa yale quantum le ezulayo athi namapolisa ayikafunyanwa.
Cha sisho nje abantu bona kufanele ukuthi ke mebeyibonile imoto mebegibela njenge quantum kuneyitike khona la khona seBaraseti sesinawana STS wonke nje sineyitike mawubona ukuthi ke le quantum athi na sticker cethu ungaligibeli ene sticker ufuna ugibele lo.
All right, Kebaba. Essentially, what this taxi driver is saying is that they're all emphasizing the point of the commuters looking at the stickers on the taxi before they get on those taxis. But I think this is part of the broader conversation that we will be having, Elvis, is to chat to taxi drivers, to chat to ordinary commuters, as we have been doing on our sister program, Morning Live, and to chat to ordinary women who are feeling quite, disturbed by the incidents that we've seen in South Africa over the past couple of weeks, into the past couple of days, and many calls from people here on the streets for government to intervene and for a continuing conversation to be had amongst ordinary South Africans, also bringing men into the fold to try and find solutions to the scourge of the killing of women. But we'll certainly continue this conversation here at the Bara Taxi Rank. We'll speak to many of the ordinary people here, both men and women, to be part of this discussion. As you heard from the Minister of Women in the presidency a bit earlier on, calling for a conversation to be had amongst all South Africans, calling for police to be more visible in areas where they say there are hotspots for these criminal activities to take place, and also the issue of femicide for these women's organizations, for men's organizations, to also have a discussion relating to the scourge that is currently facing South Africa.
Thank you, Griselda. That's our reporter at the Baragwana Taxi Rank, Griselda Lewis, coming to us live. And that's why we're asking you this question today. We're asking you this question: what are you, as a South African today, what are you doing to stop gender violence in our country? Let's start that conversation. It's over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Elvis. A very good morning to you. Of course, that's the question. But let's take the tweets. What are you guys telling us? Of course, we've got, Karabo Mukwena's funeral a little bit later today. Kananatsu says, getting out of darkness by talking about this monster and narrating my own story as a victim in my childhood and adulthood. Thank you. That is a very personal and very deep account there. Thank you again. Dipantsu says, Newsroom, respecting women as equals and speaking out as a man. Sadly, without the law taking its course, that's bad. The community must rise against this. Thank you, Dipantsu. And then Al-Ayatollah tells us that start teaching boys from grade 3 how to respect and protect girls. I actually think grade 1, because I've seen grade 1 boys behave towards women in a very unacceptable manner at the schools where my daughters have been at, I have to say. Of course, not all men are trash. This weekend, men are taking it into their hands here in the capital. Civil society groups and political parties, they're taking a stand against the abuse of women following the spike in the reports of women being murdered and raped, including children in various parts of the country. No one is immune to this, it seems. Now, let's have a look at the clip. The hashtag is not in my name, and it's happening this weekend in Pretoria. Yes, it's a men's march, but everyone is welcome. A man's march themed not in my name, planned for tomorrow. Yes, the march will start at Church Square and proceed to the Union buildings tomorrow. Social media has been abuzz with messages of support for this march. If you're a man and you're around, it might be a good idea to go to the capital tomorrow. It's just 2 hours between 10 and 12, and it certainly sends the right message with regards to what we want to see happening here in South Africa. Let's now take a look at what's trending on social media. Of course, today it's the funeral of Karabo Mokoena, just one of the many abuse cases against women that's been highlighted. This week alone, she'll be laid to rest at the West Park Cemetery, just around the corner here from the SABC. Really, this incident has even received support from women as far afield as Germany. There's a new hashtag going around, Dear South African Women. Look at this. In Germany, Dear South African Women, which is aimed at empowering, protecting, and encouraging women to fight and fight back. And women are feeling fierce today, I tell you that. Ste Baburmaya says, being taught self-defense must now be in the curriculum, at least for grade 10 and upwards. They can't be our future if dead. It's firm that, but it's fair. Firm but fair is my view. Then Tsatsi posted this picture of a pepper spray canister and says, this only costs 60 Rand. Get yourself one. The streets aren't safe anymore. Well, it's real. It is real. We can't put our heads in the sand and say it's not. Women walk the streets and get hit in the head and dragged off. Then Mufasa posted this picture of the contents of her handbag. He says, yeah, you can see a knife. She says, carry a weapon to protect yourself. Ask someone to teach you how to use it. Then go and take a look at this post by South African Heroes titled Through a Rapist's Eyes. And it's a collection of answers from men in prison who've been charged with sexual abuse or rape, and how they pick out their victims. Go and read this and get an idea. Now, of course, on a sad note for the Eastern Cape, General Motors, as we move on, General Motors say they are closing down their businesses in various countries, including South Africa. And Ulrich J. van Vieren says, General Motors has announced that it's leaving South Africa. Goodbye jobs, opportunities, and money. He says, yes, but we'll have to find innovative ways to move forward. Then in the latest study conducted in England by the Royal Society for Public Health, it's found that Instagram has the most negative impact on users' mental health due to posts of travel and filtered people and body images. 1,500 people aged between 14 and 24 said they suffered from loneliness, depression, and body image anxiety after scrolling through the image-focused site Instagram. That's why you don't see me on Instagram. I'm just not that photogenic. Anyhow, a picture of the day comes from Kool-Aid. Look at this. I like it. It's kind of old school. And it's captioned, Dear South African Women. That's a hashtag that's trending in Germany. Respect yourself and stay away from men that hurt you. It's as simple as that. He's not going to change. He's not going to change. And you can't make him change. Now for our comment of the day. This one from Kruger T. That's Tandom Tamsanga, who says, things I will not stop doing. Now this is a funny hashtag doing the rounds, and it says correcting people's grammar on Facebook. Well, I do it on Twitter as well. There's a difference between this, these, and there. Simple. And when you tweet us, use words, not code. We're too old for that. Anyhow, moving on. Let's take a look at, well, this is what's in the courts here in South Africa. We'll start in Johannesburg, where 3 men that are expected in the Protea Magistrates Court. Again, this in connection, of course, with the killing of 2 women in Soweto at the weekend. Their bodies were found in different locations. Then, in the Western Cape, the High Court is expected to sentence 2 men for fatally assaulting a Stellenbosch University graduate, Carl Scoombie. In 2015, Brent Henry and Joan Jacobs followed Scoombie, who was traveling home from a nightclub, in an Uber taxi. They blocked the taxi in a cul-de-sac and brutally assaulted him, leading to his death. Now, we've got a lot to get to today. After the break, we're going to talk more about, well, firstly, reaction to what happened in the taxi there a little bit, men's attitude, men are trash, but also we're going to talk about what's happening in our country. Don't miss it.
Rights and Recourse tackles constitutional issues.
When South Africa became a constitutional democracy, we had a fairly sound legal system in place requiring the Constitution to guide the direction in which it must go and the way in which it must be refashioned.
The Justice Ministry, the custodian of human rights.
We actually have a plan to come up with a comprehensive review of our human rights instrument.
Advocates dealing with evidence.
Sometimes you have to use a crook to catch a crook. So we expected that their credibility would really be taken to task. You try and consult your witnesses and prepare them as best as you can.
Hashtag Rights with Dumila Matez on legal issues every Sunday at 2 o'clock Central African Time.
A 16-man task team has been established to investigate the deaths of 4 women in Soweto in what appears to be another spate of femicidal attacks. The bodies were found in open veldt in different areas in just one weekend. This has now brought back the issue of gender-based violence and femicide back to the spotlight as the country is still reeling from, of course, the gruesome details surrounding the killing of Karabo Mokoena. Now, a body believed to be hers was found burnt beyond recognition, sparking outrage on social media. DNA tests have since confirmed that the remains belong to her indeed. Of course, a funeral service for her burial is currently underway in Diepkloof in Soweto. What narrative should anti-women abuse campaigns use to catch the attention of abusers and even would-be abusers? To talk about this, we are joined in studio by Lebo Ramafoko, the Chief Executive Officer at Soul City Institute for Social Justice this morning. A very good morning to you, Lebo. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
We watched what was happening in the taxi there a little bit earlier, and you weren't happy with what the gentleman was saying.
Yeah.
Tell me why that rubbed you up the wrong way.
I just haven't been happy with the narrative from men and sometimes women about what causes gender-based violence. I'll give you an example. We are told about stickers that are on taxis. And we've also at Soul City spoken to Santaku. Now, one important fact, none of the taxi drivers on our roads anywhere in South Africa are checked or vetted in any way. So, you know, the guy on the taxi is talking about girls must not go out with taxi drivers. I don't understand the correlation with rape. When I don't know when I get onto a taxi, regardless of whether I'm 2 years old going to crash or I am 90 years old going to get my old age pension, whether the person who's driving me is a pedophile, whether or not they are a serial killer or a serial rapist. And those are things that the taxi industry must be looking at. Who are you employing and who are you putting behind the wheel? We have heard before women, because of what they were wearing, being shamboked at Noord taxi rank in South Africa. So the kind of misogyny that they have, I don't hear any of them reflecting on their own behavior. I don't hear any of them saying, we've got to change. They now have a message for how young women must behave. For me, it continues what for me is at the root of gender-based violence, which is men believing that they must police women, women's sexuality, women's bodies. And I really want to scream.
Is this idea of omnipotence and, in a way, ownership, isn't it?
It's about ownership. It's about control. And women have that experience. It's about patriarchy and male superiority and how power and force, and the fact that there are no social consequences to many of these attitudes and these crimes. That is why we are having the kinds of gender-based violence that we are having right now.
Now, of course, the levels and the stats don't lie, and you can't go up against the statistics and say, oh, it's a lie, because it's real. A woman is killed, 3 women a day are being killed by the intimate partners in South Africa. I think it's It's one of the highest in the world, 5 times the global average. The numbers don't lie at all. How do you view, though, the heinous kind of violence that we are seeing, not just against women, but also against children?
Well, we have let this go on for a while. As I said earlier, there are no social consequences. I think we are failing at the most basic things. You know, it took a father calling a radio station after their 13-year-old daughter had been missing for 3 weeks for a frenzy of things to do. We are very reactionary, and we can then go on a frenzy and things die. So if a woman, and in fact, the statistics that you are talking about is underreporting.
Yes, it is.
Even in the Gauteng taxi violence that we have had, the majority of women who went to a hospital, who went to police station, reported secondary victimization.
They say it could be 10 times as high underreporting
or 100 times
of these matters. I want to take you to something that caught the attention this week, and that was Men Are Trash, the hashtag activism on social media. Some call it slacktivism. Others say it's needed because you know, it starts the conversation in our communities. Let's take a look at Men Are Trash and the view that I found one of the most interesting views this week, and this is a modern man, Professor Kopano Ratele.
Well, this is a provocative statement, and I think some of us men take it personally, have responded personally that it means you are trash. But I've been thinking about people like, you know, Bishop Tutu or Tabu Makhoba. Clearly, a hashtag like Men Are Trash is not referencing men like that. And I don't think one should confine it to the personal. It is a social problem. Women are trying to say, provoke us to react and respond to the fact that in this country, the levels of violence against women, gender-based violence, are unacceptably high, and men have to respond to this.
A reaction from men in South Africa, this kind of hashtag, do you think it's done that?
I support it. I support Men Are Trash. I support Men Are Trash because it speaks about the patriarchy and the masculinity that we have seen. I support it because I don't think men can police how women feel and how they express their anger. I support it because it jolts me to sit back. I support it because at 8 o'clock, when I walk in the night or somebody knocks at my door or I drive, I do not know that the man that I encounter is a good man. So the whole not all men are bad or some men are good does nothing for me when I see a man. If I was to meet a man and the lion that was in the Kruger National Park, I'll probably run to the lion, you know, because if it had been fed, it would probably not rape me and leave me with scars. So I do support the fact that women have a voice, and I don't think it's the place of men to basically tell women. And I also think that it is so patriarchal to also say, oh, but I am not good. It sounds like I am not bad. I am not trash. We are not going back. Yeah, it's like playground things, but I'm a nice guy. Well, thank you for being nice. But if nice did not save Karabo from
what
dying.
Are you doing? Is that the question men should be asking? What am I doing? How am I getting involved? What about the march tomorrow? What about those men?
For me, it sounds like not all of us are bad brigade. I heard a clip on radio where one of the men was saying we want women to come and march alongside us and tell us what is our expectation of men. I find that very bizarre. I don't know why I must be marching to tell a man that raping me, burning me, catcalling me is wrong. I think men need an introspection, and it's long been coming, that they need to ask ourselves what they are doing in their daily lives.
67% of all fathers are absent in South Africa's households. That's 2 out of every 3 fathers across all race groups. If you individualize it, the numbers can get higher and lower. But 2 out of 3 in all households are not there. And do you think that's having the kind of effect on bringing up boys that we're seeing play out in this kind of unpleasant way in our society?
It absolutely plays a role. Who is the role model of a boy child growing up on their own, you know? The thing is that this whole issue is about a men standing up and calling each other out about a whole lot of the things where they have abdicated, fully abdicated their responsibility.
I want to talk a little bit more about that because it's such an important factor. How do we reverse the this kind of thing? You know, how do we reverse the absent father? How do we counter that? Because it's so difficult.
Well, I don't know if it is difficult. I think it is about the will, you know, of men to basically re-look at how they act in society and the role that they have played in society. For an example, we can all shout about poverty.
Yeah.
But if you actually find out that, you know, a lot of the men, and I have seen such a study before, that what does a woman who's a domestic worker, you know, what does a woman do with the very little that they get as opposed to a man with a little bit of money? The whole issue of masculinity is systemic.
Yeah.
We are seeing a masculinity that does not serve men. Mandla Hlajwayo died at the hands of men.
Yeah.
So there are so many layers of the things that men need to do to question the current masculinity that basically all men are socialized into.
That's what Professor Kapana tells us. Our problem is as much a masculinity problem as it is anything else. We've been running this question today, and I want to get your view because Men Are Trash caused a lot of consternation this week, and well, of course there's a lot of criticism. People say, oh, it divides further. Others are telling us that, oh, this kind of thing don't work. Then, of course, the positive one says, no, it works. Yeah, we've got a 50-50 split on hashtag activism. Does it work, or does it even have a role to play? What do you say?
What social media has done is to put on a much broader global stage what conversations have been happening before.
Yeah.
And it is a medium, but it cannot be seen as a means to an end. I have been enriched by conversations that some I have agreed with and others I have challenged.
Yeah.
And I have seen young, old, different races, people engaging.
Yeah.
As long as we don't view it as an end in itself, it has a very great role to play in articulating what people want to talk about.
Lebo, thank you for coming in today and cutting to the chase with us. You're not holding back today, but that's what men need to hear. I think that's what we all need to hear. It is what it is. Lebo Ramafoko is the Chief Executive Officer at Soul City Institute for Social Justice. Of course, you guys have been tweeting us on the hashtag activism question. Let's have a look what Andile says. Andile says, it doesn't help either because these things continue like wildfire. Yeah, it's hopeless a little bit. Precious says, no, it's not working as long as criminals still have rights more than the victims. To take away the rights of criminals. Sipom Tambu says, recently in my location, an old man was stabbed right next to the nose by thugs while he was going to work. So hashtags doesn't work. Hard, but to the point. Katlejo says, it doesn't work. Activism is like a dog barking without teeth. I'm sorry to say this, but mob justice is a solution. Sometimes offenders are treated nice. Ooh, what if you are falsely accused? What if Katlejo, if you didn't commit the crime and they necklace you? Imagine that. Anyhow, it's a tough day today. It's Karabu Mokwena's funeral service has started in Deep Cliff. We're looking at all of this and other stories on our Facebook page right now. The Communications Minister, Ayanda Dlodlo, says community media that reaches communities which the mainstream media cannot. Now, she was speaking at George in the Southern Cape, where she was the guest of honor at a local station's anniversary celebrations, right there on our Facebook page. Then we also see a Japanese billionaire bought a Basquiat masterpiece for $110.5 million. That was in New York yesterday, setting a new auction record for the 20th century great, nearly 30 years after his death. This is according to Sotheby's. Yes, a great European artist. Finally, experts say the recent spike in measles cases in Gauteng and the Western Cape is as a direct result of parents refusing to vaccinate against the illness. They've warned that the reckless habit of not vaccinating in general could fuel a rise in antibiotic-resistant superbugs. So go and get your shot, they say. All of that on our Facebook page and more on our website, sabc.co.za/news. Elsewhere in the world, this is what some of the front pages have for you today. We'll start in Europe with the Times. Theresa May promised to confront unearned privilege in the cause of building a great meritocracy beyond Brexit as she set out policies to shift money and resources away from the middle classes and the elderly, and they don't like it in the UK. Moving to New York, the Times there reports that the number of suspected cases of Ebola has risen to 29 from 9 in less than a week in an isolated part of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where 3 people have died from the disease since April 22. This is according to the World Health Organization. Finally, in Israel, the Jerusalem Post reports that US President Donald Trump will decide whether to move the American embassy in Israel to Jerusalem from Tel Aviv after visiting the region next week, and based in part on what he learns on the ground. Now, that's the international news right now. Of course, today we're remembering Karabo Mokoena. We've dedicated a whole show to it. Of course, the funeral service for her and memorial services for others are currently underway. Let's go over to Elvis as we continue talking about, well, femicide and men are trash.
Yes, Eben, of course, that's our discussion today. We're asking you the question. You can participate on the Twitter handle as well as on the Facebook page. But the recent death of Karabo Mokoena has brought the issue of femicide in the country under the spotlight. Now, media reports suggest that Karabo was killed by an intimate partner during a jealous scuffle. The funeral service, as you know, is currently underway. Now, after she was reported missing for days, her friends campaigned tirelessly on social media for her safe return. But it was not to be, as a lifeless body was found burnt beyond recognition. Since that gruesome discovery, women and men on social media have been debating the safety and security of vulnerable groups such as women and children under the hashtag #MEnAreTrash. And now, with the revelations of 4 Soweto women suffering the same fate, allegedly at the hands of men that claim to love them, another hashtag has emerged. Hashtag #WhyDoMenHateUs. Now, to discuss social media activism, we are joined in our Durban studios by Pritesh Siraj. He's a social media analyst. A very good morning to you, and a long time no speak. Good to speak to you again.
Yeah, good morning, officer. Good to, be with you virtually this time instead of in studios with you.
Now, Pritesh, if we look at social media, how effective is social media activism, you think?
So, as somebody who's in social media and dealing with lots of trends, I have to say that slacktivism is real. I mean, the reality is that a lot of people believe that they can use social media to go out there and raise issues, which is true. But the reality is that look at Coney 2012, look at Bring Back Our Girls. Nothing really came off those social media campaigns. So if you believe that your entire activity has to be based on social media, you're not going to get much success out of that.
Do you think that social media has given a voice to the voiceless? Because traditional media sometimes miss these type of stories.
It has, and I think that's where the positivity comes from social media, is that when you're down and trodden and you don't have a place to actually highlight the issues that you're going through, social media is a space that you can take it on, go to a curated group of people who think and act like you, and have them then spark that conversation to spread so that people can pick it up. And so that's the benefit of it. But a conversation on its own is not enough, as I was saying. So it does give you a voice, but does that voice actually result in end results? And that's the question we should be asking.
Men are trash. We heard it earlier from Professor Kupano. It was necessary to start that conversation. Is that your belief as well, that these type of hashtags start that conversation and in order for people to communicate and to converse?
So it's a bit of a slippery slope. So it's easy to start a conversation on social media. And we can see, in the same way that certain racist comments are so easy for people to go and put out there, we have to be careful. Are we comfortable in starting conversations that take us down a slippery slope that can take us into a place of negativity? Or should we be looking at solving the problem? Remember, it's so easy to speak about the negative side of an issue. But shouldn't we be reinforcing the message on the positive? Should the conversation be men are trash, or should the conversation be how do we breed stronger men? How do we breed men who respect women? And focusing on the positivity is what's really going to make a difference on social media. Focusing on the negativity is only going to take us down the same path that we've been going down, not just for decades, but for millennia.
Now, unlike traditional media where you have gatekeepers or editors to monitor the news flow, in social media there are none. How much perhaps undue influence does this give to the campaigner or in social media?
Well, see, social media is almost in a way self-regulated. We self-regulate our communities. Unless there's a concerted effort by a certain group to push a topic in a certain direction, which we know that happens with certain public relations companies. But when it comes to social issues and social justice issues like this, I think it's good. I think it really helps us to bring out topics. I don't think it's being steered in a direction that's not organic. So when it's an organic conversation that comes from really some deep-rooted social challenges, we're going in the right direction. If instead these are topics that are taken control over by certain influence groups or certain groups trying to influence the topic in a different direction, then we're in a dangerous position.
But does it not unfairly perhaps bash particular groups in society and spread hate speech in that regard because there's no monitoring?
That's always going to be a challenge. It's not something we can get away from. But again, when certain topics exist in society, when those topics are rooted in, again, social justice issues where we don't feel that these topics are properly being covered by the discourse that's happening, then social media is a good way to start it. The challenge that you also have is that you may have some hate speech that comes out, but when hate speech comes out, you then equally have a counteracting force of positivity against that. And we've seen that example with the Penny Sparrow cases as well, where when that hate speech comes up, then you have society stepping into place to stop that. But the reality is when we do have topics that need to be discussed and are not being given fair attention, social media is a great place to start it so that other people are confident and are happy enough to take that conversation further.
Mm-hmm. How does slacktivism change the dynamics of campaigning and the narrative that's associated with it, such as this one that we've seen, men are trash and of course not in my name?
So the challenge with slacktivism, obviously, it gives fire to campaigns that shouldn't necessarily sometimes have the power that it does. Why? Because you're sitting with your device or you're sitting behind a computer screen and as a no-name person, you can go out there and continue to this talk and into this, but there isn't really any value that's coming out of it. Just because you can, in a moment of heated emotion, go out there and tweet something or put something on social media does not mean that you really stand for something. And that's the challenge with slacktivism, is that a lot of people are so happy to sit and tweet, but when it comes down to taking the conversations offline, when it comes to taking this movement offline to make a real difference, nothing is being done. And that's the challenge with slacktivism, because it creates this impression that society is willing to change for the good. And then other times, society is not willing to do that. Society is very happy to stay in a place of comfort and feel better just by sending out a 140-character tweet.
Pritesha, thank you so much for your time and joining us in our Durban studios.
Thank you so much, Elvis, and good chatting to you.
That was Pritesh Shiraz. He's a social media analyst giving us his take on slacktivism. What's your thoughts on it? Let us know what's on your mind on the Twitter handle as well as on the Facebook page. But right now, time to talk sports with Kendall and Evan.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, we're going to park the discussion on Femicide and these very heavy-weighted conversations to talk a little bit of rugby now, Kendall, and probably the surprise of the season and the good news story of Super Rugby, the Kings.
Really has been the good news story because the Kings, if you remember, there are rumours that they're going to get the chop going to 2018. The two South African sides that are going to get the chop being one of them, the Kings. And it seems as if they've not let it get in their way. In fact, it seems to have galvanized them into some action.
Yeah, even worse. I mean, before the start of the season, they had no money. The CEO was in the news more than the team.
Got arrested by the Hawks.
Yeah, it was a total mess then. And I think the guy that must take a lot of credit is the coach, Dion Davids. There are even rumours of Dion Davids maybe moving to one of the bigger franchises in South Africa.
Yeah, no, that would be good for South African rugby in general, but it would be unfortunate for the region itself, because people will remember that the reason for the Kings being in existence and the reason for the push to have the Kings in Super Rugby is to make sure that the cradle of African rugby in South Africa keeps going.
It's interesting, though, that big name players that are playing at the big franchises, they haven't had a great year, have they?
No, they haven't. I mean, the Kings right now are sitting above the Cheetahs and the Bulls. You know, they've played 10-1-4, and they've got more points than the Bulls and the Cheetahs. Who would have said that would have happened?
You would not have said that. What's the tail of the tape this weekend? They're playing the Brumbies, hoping to win 4 in a row.
Hoping to make it 4 in a row. It's phenomenal stuff. One will remember that they beat the Sharks last weekend, which was the very first time that the Kings had actually beaten a South African side in Super Rugby. Prior to that, they'd beaten the Rebels and the Waratahs.
Absolutely.
So phenomenal stuff.
It's been incredible. I watched the game they won in Sydney. You know, South African teams don't win in Sydney a lot, and they did it with such passion and flair. It was great to watch. Okay, myself and Kendall will be back top of the hour, bringing you a little bit more after, well, we'll talk about Africa and Africa Day after 10 o'clock this morning. Don't miss it.
Do you support the calls made by Bladen Nzimande and Solly Mapaila?
It is not a call by Comrade Solly Mapaila and Comrade Bladen Nzimande. It is the position of the party.
Yes.
And the position of the party, we support it unambiguously.
Why?
The theory of the revolution, in simple terms, was that revolutionary forces are going to take charge of the state. And having taken charge of the state, they are going to transform the state to eventually transform society.
Join me in Port Sedu live every Monday to Thursday at 17:30.
Well, a very good morning and welcome to AM News live at 10:00 hours across all Central Africa regions.
A fitting send-off for a revolutionary giant, a life dedicated in service of the people.
The result means that the Swallows are out of the ABC Multiple League and drop to the amateur fourth tier of South African football, the SAB League.
Tune in on AM News every Saturday and Sunday from 10 hours.
R1.4 billion was raised to build the institution. Additional funding came from ordinary South Africans.
It's been heartwarming to have seen the project from 2009 when the first sorting happened to see it today being completed. Indeed, this is going to be our benchmark going forward. It's just been incredible.
Jammeh has said in the past that only Allah can remove him from office, and once claimed he would rule the tiny riverside West African nation for 1 billion years.
We are going to win this election.
Even if we avoid a downgrade, we're still hovering very dangerously close to junk, and that'll of course affect markets next year.
Our markets are actually already punishing us for a downgrade that may or may not come.
Woods made a blistering start but eventually slumped to a 1 over par 73 and is 9 shots behind the leader and his compatriot JB Holmes.
You know, I just made some really, if you look at it, some really silly mistakes. Mistakes I don't normally make, but I hadn't played in a while, and you know, unfortunately I made those mistakes. I can clean that up.
10 o'clock Central African time. Very good morning to you. It's myself and Kendall Mahamati with you for the next hour. Morning, Kendall.
Very good morning to you. Lots happening in the world of sports. The Kings are looking forward to making it 4 in a row, but we've got a very heavy news program today as well.
Yeah, it's been a heavy week. It's been that kind of week, you know, when you have to introspect a little bit, both as a man and as a nation. It kind of wears you down a little bit, but we have to do this. We all have to do this. Of course, President Jacob Zuma says women and child abuse has reached crisis levels in South Africa and called on all South Africans, me, you, everyone, to chip in and fight against this scourge. This is what we want you to do, Kendall.
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, a man standing up saying, stop violence against women. That's what we're asking everybody to do. Stand up for
and
what
this
you believe
man
in.
represents every man. You, me, all of us.
Yeah. And our question really for you is, what are you doing to stop gender-based violence? We'd like to find out from you, how are you getting involved in this matter?
Yeah, you guys have been tweeting us on this question. We know we all need to do something, both men and women. There's no point in pointing fingers and screaming at each other.
Yes.
We need to find each other.
100%.
We need to find each other, and we need to find solutions. We need to bring up our children so that the next generation at least reverses this trend that's scary at the moment.
I'm heartened by some of the responses we've been getting. Katapa,
Yeah.
for example, says, I'm a teacher. I instill respect and love to my learners. Women and children are the most vulnerable, helpless and in danger. And only men can stop this.
That's our role. That's what we have to take responsibility for, Katlego. Love your work. Please keep tweeting us, my friend. Ikona Natsu says, getting out of darkness by talking about this monster and narrating my own story as a victim in my childhood and adulthood. Yes, Ikona Natsu, we've all had difficult childhoods. I did, Kendall did, you did, we all did. It's no excuse for any kinds of behavior in the now. Of course, we're also conducting a poll on social media on activism or hashtag activism or selectivism. I'm a little bit lost with all of the terms, Kendall.
No, but yes, absolutely. I think this is apt as well. There's hashtag activism work as the question. And very interesting, some of the hashtags we've got in this question are men are trash, not in my name, men against abuse. Fantastic.
Femicide. That's the one that I think is the big problem. It's the killing of women, it seems, for entertainment. For entertainment, it seems, at times. June B tweets us, Kendall says, could the men are trash hashtag provoke anger in men and thus more violence against women? That surely is a risk, isn't it?
It always is. When you come up with something contentious, it could go either way. But I think 50% are saying it should be done, where Sipom Tembu says to stop gender violence in some way, government must deploy more cops, soldiers, and bring back arrests who patrol, or bring back the berets who patrol at day and night.
Yeah, we need to think about how do we use the resources we have in South Africa. Philemon Patlani says, Newsroom, the influence of drugs is the main problem here. The government must confront the drug lords first. I agree with you, Philemon. I've seen it firsthand. I've seen what men do when they are sober, and I've seen what men do when they are high. And when they are high, they are no longer human.
Absolutely. And some of them use it as a mask, as an excuse, though.
Yep. Sometimes I see the after effects of these drugs. Mandrax down in the Cape has decimated communities because men become so evil. They fight each other with gardening equipment in the streets. You know what I mean? The mind boggles. So the drug question is one question that needs to be addressed because you can see how behavior changes.
Alcohol, nyaope, dik, all of these things which actually alter the state of mind are also to blame for this.
Yeah, we need to get it out of our communities, no doubt. Anyhow, let's get into our work. Time for myself and Kendall to take a look at your top stories on this Friday. 22-year-old Karabo Mokoena, whose burnt body was discovered in the veld north of Johannesburg, will be laid to rest at the West Park Cemetery this morning. 3 men are expected to appear in the Protea Magistrates Court in connection with the killing of 2 women in Soweto last weekend. And the South African Communist Party, well, they will be having a national Imbizo aimed at finding solutions to the different challenges facing the country. Those are our top stories right now. Let's see what's happening in the world of sport with Kendall.
Eben, thank you very much. Quite a lot happening in the world of sport. We touched a little bit on what's happening with the Kings. You know what? We've got a little bit ahead of ourselves. Let's bring it to you as a well-rounded package of what's happening for everything in the world of sports this weekend.
We had a very good week. We kept up the intensity from last week. We put the win behind us, and we just focused on what's needed to be done against the Brumbies.
The Southern Kings are the revelation of the latter stages of Super Rugby 2017 as they seek to make it 4 wins in a row when they meet the Brumbies this weekend.
And he keeps that streak alive. Novak Djokovic is in his 11th straight quarterfinal here in Rome.
6-4, 6-4.
Former world #1 Novak Djokovic looks more like his old self as he dispatches Roberto Bautista Agut in straight sets in Rome. And soon to retire Germany and Bayern Munich captain Philipp Lahm is set to play his last match for his beloved Bayern this weekend. All this and more I've got for you later on, about 10:40 or so. Do stay with us. Evan has got the news.
Yeah, our top story right now. 22-year-old Karabo Mokoena, whose burnt body was discovered in the veld north of Johannesburg, will be buried at the West Park Cemetery today. Mokoena had been reported missing by her family last month. Her boyfriend, Sandile Mantswe, has been charged with her murder and defeating the ends of justice. Mourners at a memorial service earlier this week pleaded with men to stand up and protect women and children. 3 men arrested in connection with the Soweto murders of 24-year-old Poppy Gumede and 28-year-old Bongeka Pungula will appear in the Protea Magistrates Court as well today. Gumede's body was found in Naledi last week Friday and Pungula's the following day in Tladi. The duo from KwaZulu-Natal were living together in Zola. Police are looking for the killers of two other women as well who were killed and dumped in Soweto over the same weekend. On Sunday, Lerato Moloi's body was found or discovered in Naledi. She'd been stoned, allegedly raped and burnt. Another victim's body was also found in Mofolo. Now, for more on the story, we are joined on the line by our reporter, Matlako Komani. A very good morning to you, Matlako.
Good morning, Eben.
Just give us an idea, these suspects say they've appeared in court, yeah?
Eben, we are indeed at the Protea Magistrates Court, and from what I understand is it's actually not 3 men that have been arrested in connection with the Kwabe and the Pungula murder, but rather 1 man has been arrested. And what we are then understanding, we're still waiting for the case to go to court. But what we do understand is that the gentleman that was indeed arrested, or the suspect that was arrested, is actually arrested in connection specifically with Bongeka Pungula's murder. On the Kwabe murder, on Kwabe's killer, we were still not sure what is happening there, but we're still waiting for more information. But also on Wednesday, I think this is where the 3 comes from. On Wednesday, we had 2 men that appeared at the very same court in connection with the murder of Lerato Moloi from Soweto as well.
The murders of Poppy and Bongeka, are they connected at all? Because they were living together, and it sounds a bit sketchy at the moment.
It's definitely very sketchy at the moment, and police are not really telling us much. We're just going to have to wait to go in court and find out exactly are they actually related, and the suspect that has been arrested, who exactly is he arrested? With whose murder has he been arrested for?
How will this matter now proceed? Tell us what's happening there today.
It's a first appearance. What we do know that it's a first appearance, so it's most likely going to be remanded so that they can go through the necessary applications for bail. That's if the suspect chooses to apply for bail.
Matlako, thank you very much for that update. That is our own reporter, Matlako Komani. She's at court where the suspects are appearing this morning. Of course, we've been asking you a question of the day. And the question is relating to all of these top news stories because it's right in our faces this week. It's all over us. What are you doing to stop gender violence? Yes, men, women. We all need to make a contribution to stop gender violence. We have to. We've got one new tweeting. Who's been tweeting us on this? It's Sipum Tembu says, sir, this thing of the courts and lawyers fighting for bail while these thugs didn't think of it when they did it needs to stop. Yes, because these guys are making money off the back of all of this, my brother. It's part, I suppose, of all the wonderful rights that we all enjoy here in South Africa under the best constitution in the world. Moving on, but in the same vein, Police Minister Fikile Mbalula has promised the community of Elsie's River in the Western Cape a satellite police station. He was speaking at last night's memorial service for 3-year-old Courtney Peters, who was murdered and raped earlier this month.
A community united until the bitter end. When 3-year-old Courtney Peters went missing, this community stood up and searched for the toddler day and night. Courtney's body was found dug up in a shallow grave not too far from her home. The alleged perpetrator is known to the community. Once again, this community has united to say justice for Courtney.
So we want to beg General Jula and this force, when we come to the police station with the case, please, whether we poor, acknowledge us, take our case, accept our case.
Police have been blamed for shoddy work and for stifling investigations. The Minister of Police reassured residents that the Elsie's River police station will never be the same again.
When I come to Elsie's River, there must be a change. Now, the community told me, yeah, they need a satellite police station. And then he agreed to me that we will bring a satellite police station in Elsie's River.
The toddler will be laid to rest on Saturday. Nomao Solwandle, SABC News, Elsie's River.
Meanwhile, President Jacob Zuma has called on South Africans to fight against women and child abuse. After visiting the family of Courtney Peters in Elsie's River yesterday, he said the murders of women and children in this country had reached a crisis point.
I hope the country will realize that on the issue of crime, we're facing a serious matter. There is negativity in the country. There is something that has gone wrong that we need to do as the society. I don't know whether we need to introduce more harsher laws or change the laws. This, I think, we must discuss.
Yes.
It's a crisis in the country. The manner in which women and children are being killed. I've been told that just here in the Western Cape, about 19 children have been killed since the beginning of the year.
Yes.
Now, this is unacceptable.
Meanwhile, the Minister of Women and Children in the presidency, Susan Shabangu, has called on all South Africans to play their role in stopping gender-based violence. Shabangu said this during an interview with SABC News this morning at the Barra taxi rank in Soweto, where she's trying to raise awareness against the of women and raping on taxis.
It will never be visible enough because visibility must go with change, must go with effect and impact on the women. So for now, the mere effect of that, we continue to see the scourge increasing and becoming a crisis, a national crisis for us. But also what is key, as Colleen has indicated, we've got to start working closer together. We must move away from our little territories, and collectively we can make a difference. And I think that does not even require monies, but it requires our commitment, our efforts, but also reaching out to the women.
I wanted to say, so what do we do as a worried woman staying in South Africa, not feeling safe? What do I need to do? How do I contribute towards finding a solution to this problem?
First, we need to make sure we reach out to those who are near to us. We need to make sure that our communities are able to embrace all women and make sure that women are respected in their own little spaces. And as soon as we start doing that, then it can expand that. Because the first problem, it starts with women who are not recognized within their communities. I'll make an example. Last week, Thursday, in Rondebelt, Boksbeek, a woman was killed. Neighbors were peeping through the windows as she was screaming, being pulled by these criminals out of her own house, being shot at. Before she could be shot at, neighbors were watching through the windows. It was at night. No one called the police, but watching. That's the space which we've got to close in and close ranks in making sure that the first point of call, we have Ubuntu, we can reach out. We don't ask, what has she done? We are able to show sympathy and make sure that we reach out to those women. She's there today, a mother of two, because community, the immediate neighbors were watching, peeping through the windows. That's the first point of call. Our consciousness, our conscience must speak to us that we are people, and the person where this particular activity is happening is another human being.
Also speaking to SABC News this morning, Genderlink CEO Colin Lowe-Morna has called on police to come to the party in the fight against gender-based violence.
I think we need to understand the anger that is out there that has led to that hashtag, and then we need to harness that anger and turn it to action. No revolution ever started without anger, you know, and women are angry. They're angry.
And scared as well. They're terrified.
Scared. Exactly, because of the lack of action. But now what we need to do is see how we can turn that around. The statistic is that 5 in 6 men are not violent. But where are those 5 in 6 men?
Where are
we
they?
need to see them at the front of the march.
True.
It's great that on Saturday there's going to be a march by men in Pretoria, and I hope that men will turn out in huge numbers to say, hello, I am not one of those men, and I am going to hold any man who is abusive accountable. We need citizen action. One, we can only honor Karabo if we get out as citizens and we demand action, we demand accountability, we demand that our systems work for us. Imagine for a moment if every 8 hours a man were killed by his intimate partner. Would there not be a state of emergency? Somehow a woman's life in our country is less valuable than that of a man. Until we turn that around, we're not going to get the kind of solutions that we need. Why is it? Look, one thing about femicide is that any death, any birth is reported. So femicide is reported. The police know these things. Why are only 30% of those cases lead to successful convictions when we have all the information at hand? Why is it that the maximum penalties are not being meted out in these cases? We as citizens need to ask those questions and hold our systems accountable, because the simple fact is men are getting away with murder.
This as the Commission for Gender Equality is now calling for a national strategic plan to fight gender-based violence. The Commission spokesperson says churches should also play a role in the fight against women abuse. Our team spoke to the Commission's chairperson a little bit earlier.
We need to have a national strategy to deal with gender-based violence as a matter of agency. Okay. We need, as men, as ourselves, to begin to talk to a boy child. We need to talk to ourselves as men and hold ourselves accountable. We cannot dismiss hashtags like men are trash. If some men are rebelling against it, it means it's making a necessary impact in society. Because it cannot be this day and age whereby I see someone, I still keep quiet, and yet I regard myself as a real man in society. We need to speak up as men. We need also to know that every 8 hours, a woman is being killed by intimate partner. We also need to sensitize our police, very much so. We also need to work with men. The church must pray for women. The church, even a single day, I heard yesterday they were talking at Regina Mode. Yeah. But what was lacking is the role that the church is doing, insofar as the women we're praying for women.
Okay.
If we can do that, my sister, half the battle will be won.
All right.
And we need to go to taxi ranks, engage with them, talk to them.
The South African Communist Party will hold a national Imbizo aimed at finding solutions to the different challenges facing the country, they say. Now, the National Imbizo will be attended by alliance partners and a wide range of social formations representing different sectors committed to solving both the symptoms and root causes of the problems facing the South African society. The National Imbizo will serve as a platform for participants to share their perspectives on the challenges facing the country and then the way forward. Representatives from alliance partners and the South African Council of Churches, amongst others, will address this meeting. Now, all of that said, let's just have a look at the poll, because we're dealing with activism. Yes, we need a national plan. It's all part of activism. We all need to be activists against violence against women and children. This is where we're standing. 207 of you have voted. Now, does it work? More of you, just slightly more of you think it doesn't work. Well, we need to talk somehow. At least we are talking, is what I'm saying. And we need to take these conversations into our homes. That's what happens. I like it. You guys are tweeting us on this. This one from Precious, who says, it's not working as long as criminals still have rights more than the victims. Yes, Precious. CPIM 10 investigations, government involvement, education. What you're saying is all of us. We all need to chip in. We all need to get together, my friend. That's what it's going to take for us to come to terms with this thing. But let's shift our focus now, because the month of May is commemorated as Africa Month. And South Africa, well, South Africa is marking it under the theme, the Year of OR Tambo, building a better Africa and a better world. The month is an opportunity to promote African unity, deeper regional integration, and recommit Africa to a common destiny. Let's talk about this. Analysis on the significance of Africa Month and the challenges facing the continent. We are joined by our African analyst and the most knowledgeable man on anything, anywhere in Africa, Isak Khomo. Very good morning to you, Isak.
Morning.
Yeah, I have to give you a bit of a welcome, because you know you're such a humble man. I've interviewed many people, and very few know as much as you do about every country on the continent.
Don't put me that high. When I get fall, it's a way back down.
There's a long way for you to fall, my brother. Don't worry, we all fall at some point. But it's Africa Month, and it's been such a heavy week for us here in South Africa with regards to gender violence, children being killed, women being killed, all that kind of thing. Can I start by asking you, killing women and children is an un-African thing. Where does this thing come from?
Well, you see, the thing is this, that people have got to look at where it comes from and what it is. You know, I hold a view that gender violence basically is just a manifestation of the decay of a very important institution. That's the family.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fathers are not present in the
family,
home.
Yeah, exactly. But then you find that the destruction of the family unit, it's not been looked at. But if you look at communities empirically, at all communities where you've got dysfunctional families, I'm going to start with, not even in Africa, I'm going to start with the favelas of Brazil. Yeah, you go to also the favelas of Venezuela, Colombia, you get to the inner cities of the USA, yeah? And then you come even to South Africa. And in South Africa, we look at it historically.
Yeah.
If you look at the events which are taking place in the Cape Flats among our Cape
there's a lot of similarities between the Cape Flats.
But then now that thing that it moved out, now again you find that even with the other townships, but the common factor is the breakdown of the family unit and a preponderance of the dysfunctional family, one-parent family and things like that.
Yeah.
Now, that's why it is. Now, the sociologists have really got to come with that. Yeah, you see, the family is very important because that's where people are socialized, first socialized. Yeah. You get socialized in a family. You know?
Yeah, but it's where you as a man are taught how to be a man.
Yeah. Apparently, that family is no longer important. You know? Things have become generic, issues of women, children, and whatnot. But we've got to get that institution back, and we've got to get it working, not as a male-dominated, but as a
unit that works together.
Yeah.
Support each other.
But nobody's talking about that. But
you can see the results in families that work. You see children that are excelling. You see a general sense of happiness.
The violence against women that you're seeing here, it's the same as it's in Brazil. Yeah, in the favelas. It's the same, and it's even worse. It's the same as it is in the American inner city ghettos. And the common factor is the breakdown of the family unit.
There you go. Simple to the point. I told you this guy's brilliant. Anyhow, let's talk about Africa Month, because this year's theme is something that I, on a personal level, can commit with. It's OR Tambo, and the great contribution that he's made that at times I think sometimes he's not celebrated enough for? Or is it?
Well, Tambo. First of all, was my dad's classmate at Forte. Yeah. Okay, let's put that aside. O.R. Tambo was a great man. And the greatness of O.R. Tambo comes in the fact that he was able to keep the ANC together in exile. It's not a mean thing, you know. You look at to actually keep that party together. There's a lot of internal wrangling, yeah. And if you look at other party which was very popular, the PAC's got where it was. Some people say, I'm sorry about that, they call it Party of Annual Crisis, and that comes from the PAC cadres themselves in Dar es Salaam. They used to call this just a Party of Annual Crisis. It comes from the fact that the party itself could not get a leader, not have a leader which could keep the party together. Now that's where the genius of O.R. Tambo lies. I'm not talking about his politics, just to maintain an organization which is functioning. Unity, and also a functional organization. That is a very important thing.
Yeah, unity. That's something that we can maybe take from there today in the South Africa of today. I want to talk to you about the significance of Africa Month. Next week is Africa Day. How should we look at this?
Well, Africa Day, I think the way that it's commemorated or celebrated, I'm not happy about it because it's just a hip thing when you talk about Africa Day. But I mean to say that you ask people about the history, where it comes from. Not even of Africa, of the African struggle.
Yeah.
Basically, the Africa Day is supposed to remind people of the African struggle. You know, the African, this was well said by Professor Beckles from the University of the West Indies, when he talks of blacks, you know, and the image that they've got within the world. Yeah. It's nothing but just a slave.
What about the image that blacks have of themselves in the world?
Well, the image of blacks have of themselves, you know, it's demeaning, you know, because blacks, they're scared of themselves and they're scared of, you see, for a typical example, as a black man, you know, as a middle class, upper class black man, some of them, they get offended or they get attacked when they actually come against a real African, traditional African. They think that this man is letting the side down, the way he thinks, the way he talks, the way he does everything. But I mean to say that you go to China, you know, or you go to India. India, they're at home with those the traditionalists. I mean, look at Gandhi. Gandhi was an Oxford lawyer, trained in Oxford, very anglicized, highly anglicized.
Yeah, even in South Africa.
But where he comes from, But when he came to his Indian people, he used to wear a dhoti and go and sit with them, and not that. Now, if Zuma does it, people laugh at him and they despise him for that. They're not at home with it, but that's why we've got to start. You know.
Yeah, it's true. That's an interview for another day.
For another day,
I would like to do. One I would really like to do because sometimes we take our eye off the ball in South Africa because we do get angry and we do get personal a lot in South Africa. But tell me about the challenges that we face right now on the continent. We always hear about leadership, crisis, corruption, and all these kinds of things. What does the next decade need to look like for the continent?
You see, basically, the challenges of the continent, there are many. But I mean to say, if you look at it as it is, empirical as what happens, you find that there's a lot of youth unemployment. You know, you find that there is this big migration crisis with youth trying to get to Europe. So therefore, basically, that's one problem. And if you look at the other side of the thing, you find that there's no development. So the problem of the African continent is the lack of development. We are still stuck in the old, what could I say, in an appendage to other economies.
At the effect of other economies. What about what Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma said or was advocating for right now when we talk about borderless Africa? Let's just scrap all the borders and let's work on this Ubuntu thing that we're supposed to be.
Well, I will not call it cheap. I would call it, it's a simplistic thing or solution to a problem. Okay, let's have a borderless South Africa for what? And then what will end up? For what purpose? Not for what purpose? I mean to say that with critical thinking and the term that they like to use today, you actually come up with a solution to solve a certain issue. Now, if you're going to take out borders, okay, that's a very sentimental cry of people. Let's have the borderless, but it won't solve any problem. We are going to have borderless Africa. People are going to come to South Africa. They're going to they're going to overload the social system, yeah? Yeah, they're going to overload the social system, they're going to overload the schools, they're going to overload everything. So now again, we've got to come up with better solutions, and those solutions are going to come up with better analysis of our problem.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that's lacking.
Tell us about, of course, South Africa just hosted the World Economic Forum on Africa and the Pan-African Parliament. Some of the things that came out of the WEF on Africa was that Africa should start being in control of its resources. What do you make of that?
That is true. So Africans should be in charge of their resources. Yeah. And not only that, with the money flowing out, illicit
outflows. Yeah.
I mean, Africa is not in charge of its resources. And those Africans who try to actually get hold of their resources for their people, for their country, they've been taken out. I'm talking about I always keep on repeating.
You're talking about regime change?
Regime change comes from resources. Yeah, I'm talking about a person like Bagbo. I'm talking about a person like Amadou Tanji. Bagbo really wanted to control the resources or the cocoa of Ivory Coast, and the French did not like it.
But the French have a lot of interest. The French economy has a lot of interest in Africa.
No, they've got a France-Afrique relationship where Africans are not allowed to actually sort of sell their resources without first approaching the French. And the French are the people who are going to develop those resources. They own them. Yeah. So Pascal Lissouba of the Congo-Brazzaville, yeah, he tried to break away from the French hold as far as the oil is concerned. He was moved out. And it's all over the place. Lumumba, the Kabila, it's the same thing. It's the same even in Southern Africa.
Are we going to see a prosperous next decade and a prosperous next century for Africa? We read a lot about it. Barack Obama came here and talked about it. We see now 6 out of the fastest growing economies in the world are on the African continent. Is that a mirage?
Well, it is a mirage because it's not real. Yeah? When you get there, you find the thing was nothing.
Yeah.
I mean to say that if you look at the Gini index about inequality and poverty, the African poverty has increased amongst Africans in the last 20 years. Under the neoliberal dispensation, they call the first 20 years of the neoliberal dispensation as the lost decades. That's the lost 2 decades.
Yeah.
Africans have got poor. You can talk about the GDPs which are rising, but that has not trickled down. They say that African development is going to take place as a trickle down. It has not taken place. So now the African economies, they're calling for a developmental program for Africa. That has got to be part and parcel of African development. We are living in a globalized world, but the purely market-driven economies are not there. There's got to be element of developmental
What about the role then of a BRICS formation in the next decade and the role of the Chinas and the Indias with regards to Africa, but also directly South Africa?
They are very important, you see, because basically that's where the market is actually being expanded. Yeah, people are criticizing the Chinese for coming here, BRICS, but that's it's an alternative. It's not a thing that they're trying to get away the Bretton Woods institution. It's an alternative source of developmental finance. The Bretton Woods institutions, they've actually cut off issues of the developmental finance. But now with BRICS and with the Chinese, with the 50-50, now actually the Chinese funds are going to develop the infrastructure of Africa. And right now they're putting more infrastructure on the ground than has been done over the last 150 years by the Western powers.
That's the reason, of course, why we see that all the BRICS countries are under ratings pressure, let's call it that. But
no, it is true. I mean to say that you find that there is a conspiracy, and that conspiracy is clear. I mean to say Gaddafi was started being targeted from the time he talked about having an African bank, which is going to become much more powerful than the IMF, African Monetary Fund. He actually said he was prepared to put aside $100 billion. Africa hardly even gets 10 billion a year. In fact, even let me come to this point, illicit cash flows from Africa, they go over 100 billion, So Gaddafi was prepared to do that, and the French started having problems. You find that also with Brazil. They started having problems because of actually sort of forming the Bank of the South together with Venezuela, Chevas. Chevas was prepared to do that. So
will Africa, will the continent then see the end of that colonial influence that we see, whether it's French, whether it's English, whether it's Western, let's call it that?
Let's call it imperialism, it's not colonial.
Yeah.
It's
Imperialism.
Yeah. Imperialism is there. I mean to say that you don't see the end of that. Because I mean to say that you find that basically European economies or Europe, there's an analogy to it, which was put forward by Marcuse when he talked about Europe. He said that Europe is like an overbuilt man, very heavy. The torso is heavy, but it's got very weak legs. So it's got crutches, and those crutches is Africa and the rest of the world. You get rid of those crutches, it goes down. So that's the imperialist thing. Now Africa have got to learn to know the position that they're in and how to get out of it. It's a trap.
I want to be the crutch controller, actually. Pull out the crutch. Isaac, it's always great to have you with us. Isaac Homo, well, we're talking about Africa Month, this month of May, and of course next week, the 25th, it's on Thursday, is Africa Day. We'll have a special Africa Day broadcast, and we'll talk about what we've just been talking about, heavy subject matter, mind you, at length on that day with regards to Africa and, well, the effects and the things that are happening on the continent. You're watching Newsroom right here on SABC News. We'll be back with you after a short break.
A top 5 rated horse racing event in the world, fashion is a highlight for those in attendance. All decked out in blue and white, the Lomorians Queen Plate is the premier event that kicked off everyone's social calendar.
That it was all part of my master plan to cast John Legend but deprive him of his normal instrument and give that one to Ryan.
The House of Truth is not just a name. It is a religion. It is a lifestyle. It is a conviction that drives us.
What really excites me is how people have kept it very simple and also played with the theme, and how each person has interpreted it in their own way.
To stay updated with all the current entertainment news, tune into Trends every Saturday from 12 to 1.
This Ford Cougar thing is becoming a hot potato for them, excuse the pun.
US car maker Ford has finally admitted that a fault is causing some of its Ford Cougar SUVs to catch fire, and
it also formally issued a recall in South Africa.
Ford needs to take accountability.
We'll work with our dealers and try to come up with a way that satisfies them.
Good morning to you. My name is Kendall Makhamate, and of course I've got the sports for you right here on Newsroom. Now, the Southern Kings have been unbelievable in this Super Rugby season. Rumoured to be facing the chop from the elite competition, they've rallied and shown resolve and brilliance in play that has won them 3 matches in a row, including beating the Sharks last weekend. Now, playing host to the Brumbies in Port Elizabeth on Saturday, they hope to make it 3 Aussie scalps and 4 match wins in a row.
No one gave the Kings too much of a chance at the start of the season, but on current form, they have exceeded the expectations. Their pack of forwards have shown tremendous improvement in the last 2 games. One of the side's unsung heroes is scrum half Louis Schroeder, who has proved to be a vital link between the backs and the forwards.
We had a very good week. We kept up the intensity from last week. We put the win behind us, and we just focused on what's needed to be done against the Brumbies. Brumbies got a very good side, so we expect a very good battle, and yeah, we need to be up for it.
No, I don't want to take all the credit. It's a team effort. It starts in front.
and then I can just finish it off for our wings, for our speeches outside.
There are 3 injury and forced changes to the starting 15. The latest casualty is lock Wilhelm van der Slees. He joins fullback Masikole Banda and flank Chris Klute on the sidelines. Namibian international Crisanda Botha will make his Kings debut on Saturday. Thabo Daniels, SABC News, Port Elizabeth.
Now, considering the current state of affairs, the Bulls' trip to Ellis Park to face the Lions on Saturday will be a daunting one. It's been a displeasing Super Rugby campaign for the Pretoria side. Now, despite an improvement in their last outing, that against the Highlanders, there isn't much hope against the Lions, who've only lost once in 11 matches.
Happy to just go one-on-one here.
Their season has been difficult. The pressure continues to mount for the Bulls. It's a tough time to face a Lions team that is on great form.
They're a very good side. I mean, they've showed it at Ellis Park. They're very difficult. They gave the Reds 40 points. They're a very difficult side to play, and they're experienced side. See, most of these guys got 50-plus caps, maybe 1 or 2 that's less than that. The good side, yeah, it's going to be a tough mission on Saturday.
Bulls are going nowhere here, though.
The encounter comes at a time when the Bulls are facing a lot of criticism. There have also been calls for Knowles Murray to resign.
I understand the frustration. I mean, I understand that totally. And we were not good enough this year. And the guys know it as well. And I think the performance I put against the Highlanders was quite a good change around. They played well. Obviously, we wanted a result. And the only thing I can show for the public every week is their improvement.
They might be underdogs, but they will challenge for 7 points rather than going for 3. However, they face a Lions team that are obvious favourites with 10 wins in 11 matches. It's also a side that comes from 3 wins on their tour down under, beating the Brumbies, Rebels and the Force.
As a player, you need to keep your feet grounded, and that's important for us. Yes, there are some of us within the squad that have been there, and we know it's difficult, but they're going to fight. We know that, and they're going to be determined, and we know they have quality players all around the park. So it's going to be a hell of a game, and that's what we're expecting.
The Joburg outfit is currently second behind the Crusaders on the combined log. Lewantube, SABC News, Pretoria.
Now, just to keep you abreast of exactly what else is going on in the world of Super Rugby, currently we're in half-time between the Chiefs and the Crusaders. These are the 2 top teams in the competition just based on points so far, 50 and 52. Chiefs are hosting the Crusaders, leading 17-13 at half-time. But more about that a little later in the next bulletin when I bring you more detail. Now, moving on to other sporting news, and this time we'll go to tennis, where 6th-seeded doubles pair South Africa's Raven Klaasen and American Rajiv Ram are through to the quarterfinals of the Italian Open in Rome. The pair beat Oliver Marachev of Austria and Croatia's Mate Pavic 6-3 and 6-4 in the second round. Also through to the quarterfinals is 2nd-seeded Serbian Novak Djokovic after a straight sets 6-4, 6-4 victory over Spain's Roberto Bautista Agut. Other round 3 action from Rome saw Italy's Fabio Fognini, who defeated world number 1 Andy Murray, bow out to Germany's Alexander Zverev 6-3 and 6-3. 9th seed Belgium's David Goffin, a semi-finalist in Monte Carlo, was also dispatched in the round of 16, 6-3 and 6-4 at the hands of Croatia's Marin Cilic. And Canada's Milos Raonic was too strong for Tomas Berdych of the Czech Republic, winning 6-3 and 6-2 as he prepares to face Zverev in the quarterfinals.
A clinical display from Milos Raonic with the signature inside-out forehand.
And Colombia's Fernando Gaviria of Quick-Step recorded his 3rd win at the 2017 Giro d'Italia. This after he won stage 12. There's no change in the overall classifications. The Netherlands' Tom Dumoulin rides our Team Sunweb leads Nairo Quintana by 2 minutes and 23 seconds.
The riders were greeted by clear and warm conditions at the beginning of the longest stage of this year's Giro d'Italia. It didn't take long for the stage to have its first breakaway, 2 riders on the attack 3 kilometers into the race. The pair was soon joined by Mirko Maestri of Team Bardiani CSF. The Italian was in no man's land for a while, however, he finally managed to bridge the gap with the 215 kilometers still to go. Ahead of the second climb of the day, the three leaders were still pushing the pace up front. The gap from the main peloton, which was led by stage 11 winner, Team Dimension Data Omar Freili of Spain, is just over 3 minutes. The Spaniard who was leading the chasing pack was out to collect a valuable point for the King of the Mountain. A point which now means he leads the climbers classification by 3 points ahead of Jan Polach of UAE Team Emirates. Less than 8 kilometers to the finish, the three riders were caught by the peloton despite Meister's resistance. With more than 110 kilometers after the second categorized climb, being a slightly downhill till the end, a sprint finish was on the card. And it was Fernando Gaviria of Quickstep who won the close finish. Joseph Mohale, SABC News.
And American Andrew Talansky narrowly outsprinted overall leader Rafał Majka of Poland to win the 5th stage of the Tour of California. Talansky finished the race in 3 hours, 43 minutes and 15 seconds to claim his very first stage win. Talansky edged out Bora Hansgrohe's Majka in a close sprint to the finish line after a group of podium contenders broke away on the final climb. Majka's second place finish keeps him in the overall lead by just 6 seconds over New Zealander George Bennett, who finished third. American Team Sky rider Ian Boswell is in 3rd place overall. The riders will stay in the southern part of California for the final 2 stages, which include today's stage 6 time trial around Big Bear Lake. Now, a top-flight soccer game in Sweden has been postponed after a player was offered a large sum of money to help fix the result of the match. The game between IFK Gothenburg and AIK, 2 of Sweden's biggest clubs, was set to be played last night. A player in AIK was approached by a match fixer on Tuesday, but instead contacted the association, who alerted police. The General Secretary of the Swedish Football Association, Håkan Sjöstrand, told a news conference the AIK player was offered a significant amount of money if he underperformed and actively worked to make sure the team lost the match. Now there you have it, you have match fixing wherever you go, even in Scandinavia. Well done to them for postponing that match and getting to the root of that particular problem. Now Chipa United will go into their Nedbank Cup semi-final full of confidence. They beat Supersport United midweek to give their effort to remain in top-flight football a boost. Dan Smalisela's return to the technical team bench of Chipa United boosted the team, and they will be attempting to have some more of the same tomorrow. I'll be bringing you all the details of the matches that are coming up in this weekend's Nedbank Cup in the next bulletin. But before I let you go, just a quick look at what's happening in the world of Super Rugby. As I said a little earlier on, the match of the weekend, possibly a good contender for that, is that between the Chiefs and the Crusaders. The Crusaders scored a try a few minutes ago to bring the score 18-17 in their favour. This is a humdinger of a match, as you can see right now, on a bit of an injury break. But one thing that I can tell you, if you watch the Super Rugby over the next couple of hours, as well as into the weekend, you will not be sorry. We're getting close to the end of the round-robin stages. We're going to take a quick look at what's happening with the weather forecast. And before I let you go, thanks very much for having stayed with us. We've got a whole lot more for you at 11 o'clock onwards. So make sure you stay with Newsroom.
It is 6 p.m. Central African Time, broadcasting live from Johannesburg. This is Primetime News.
South Africa said farewell to one of the Rivonia trialists, Uncle Cappy. a fearless stalwart.
With this man who was so engaged, so busy, so witty, so funny, so wise, and so incredibly principled.
Joseph Shabalala has been honored for his contribution to the South African music industry. A statue in his honor was unveiled during an annual gala dinner in Ladysmith.
The shot of the day, however, belonged to American Daniel Berger, who chipped in for an eagle on the par 4 fifth hole.
For all your news updates, stay on Primetime News every Saturday and Sunday from 6 p.m.
From very humble beginnings and dusty streets in Hammanskraal, a brother, a son, a friend, a dancer, a choreographer, and a businessman recognized internationally, simply believed in himself, and everything else fell into place because of the fire and passion that was burning inside him.
My childhood was a very happy time for the big part, you know. I was a very loud child. I was rambunctious. I had a lot of energy. You know, I was that kid that would be waking up at night to entertain the elders during family festivities. But I think more than anything, you know, I was also a very confused child. You know, I struggled with a lot of identity issues, you know, because I suppose the way I saw myself inside was always different to the world that I lived in. You know, I grew up in a community where one would say there were no references of, you know, people that I would say lived the sort of life that I saw myself living.
Paul realized that his community didn't have much resources to grow his passion, so he took it upon himself to work on his craft.
To do those classes at 16 was a turning point. At 18, when I got a scholarship in Denmark, that was my breakthrough. I decided to just go for one of the free classes because I was there as an exchange student. And out of that first class, I got called aside by this lady called Martha Gardner, who at the time I didn't know was the principal of this school called the Dancer Verkstedet Dance Foundation in Denmark. And she said to me who I was and what I was doing. And I explained to her that I was in Denmark for a year for a cultural exchange program. And she said to me she could see that I love dancing. Is this something that I would like to do? And I said, yeah, you know, I love it. I suppose, you know, this is something I've always been passionate about.
As a professional dancer and choreographer, it is vital for him to take care of his body. This career may look easy, but it's not always fun and games. Paul explains what his day usually looks like.
My life is really interesting. If you told me when I was 17 or 15 that my life would be the way it is today, I would have laughed at you because of the fact that I was always into routines. I was always into being disciplined and doing things systematically. And I don't think I've lost that. I hustle every day. That I hustle from the moment I wake up till the moment I sleep.
His versatility is the reason why he was appointed as head choreographer for Africa's first dance film, Hear Me Move.
I got the opportunity to choreograph South Africa's first dance film. And they were looking for a choreographer that had an influence or a flair of different styles, but at the same time, somebody who could represent this bourgeois culture. And that was another challenge for me to say, geez, can you believe that I've gone all over the world, I've won world championships for doing jazz and classical work, and now come back home, and my first big task, is to tell our story.
He explains how personal the film was to him.
Working on that film was rather daunting. It was exhilarating in more ways than one, but it was daunting in that this was the first for Africa. It was the first for South Africa. I knew as a young person who was inspired by film the power that film has. And I walked into it understanding the responsibility we had in telling the story in a way that would inspire and give hope to the next generation. But at the same time, you know, encapsulate where South Africa is 20 years on, because we were trying to tell the story of what it means to be a young person who is trying to express themselves through dance 20 years into the new South Africa.
His message is simple. If you dream it, you can achieve it.
I've always had dreams for myself, but life has surprised me in more ways than one. And that's why I have a sense of appreciation. I have a sense of feeling almost sometimes undeserving of some of the things the opportunities that I have found myself being presented with.
City of Tshwane's first official brand ambassador, voted top 40 powerful men under 40 by Destiny magazine, a fellow for the United States government's Mandela Washington Fellowship for Young African Leaders. Just a young man from a small village, now touring internationally because of the passion and the fire burning inside him. There's definitely nothing stopping Paul Mujaji.
This is Tanya Mukwamu, co-founder of a mobile application called MaxiCash. The app is aimed at helping African expatriates send money home.
When one thinks of sending money home, it could be peer-to-peer cash transfers, or it could be buying airtime or paying for school fees or hospital bills. So the list really expands. So it was just making that process a lot easier for African expats, bearing in mind that they have such high fees, you know, going through your traditional agencies and so forth. So we just thought that, you know, that money could be routed to better use.
Being an expat from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Tanya found it rather challenging to send money from South Africa to her home country. This is when the MaxiCash app was born.
It was really personal frustration to begin with, like I think a lot of solutions. I'm an expert myself. I'm originally from the DRC, so I've had that experience of sending, you know, money to my parents or anyone I support back home, and having to leave work and you know, take time off, and there's so much paperwork, and often you don't have the right papers. I've been robbed, believe it or not, with all the, you know, with cash on me. So it was really just my own experience, and through studies, obviously, I noticed that a lot of African experts and others experience the same issues. So you know, it took the time to study and have the proper technology and make sure the market was ready for our solution.
Because of South Africa's functional banking infrastructure, mobile money services such as Kenya's M-Pesa rarely survive. What makes MaxiCash different from these?
The app is available for download on Google Play and your Apple Store. And well, one downloads it from anywhere, and we do have some selective markets where you can cash out your funds. So right now, from a cash out point of view, you can cash out in South Africa as well as the DRC, and soon entering into like the Eastern African market. We integrate with the FNB e-wallet, so the recipient will receive the money like they would, you know, you receive your SMS, your e-wallet payment is there, and you go to any FNB ATM and cash it out.
Tanya comes from a logistics and transportation industry and fell into the tech world, where she learned a lot, and with the help of other techies, she eventually built an app that will make life easier for others.
It's 1100 hours Central Africa time. It's the final hour here in the newsroom. It's a Friday. I'm Elvis Preston.
I'm Kendall Mahamad.
Jumbo Africa, and a very good morning to you. Now today the focus is on President Jacob Zuma, who says that women and child abuse has reached crisis proportions here in South Africa.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's been intense. This entire week has been intense in terms of emotions, in terms of what's been going on in our society, and that's why we're making sure that our viewers stay interacting with us. And we're asking you the question: what are you doing to stop gender-based violence in light of everything that's going on in South Africa?
Well, some men have started another hashtag, not in my name. So what are you doing? There's going to be a march tomorrow to take a march a stand against women and children abuse. So what are you doing? Let us know on the Twitter handle as well as on the Facebook page. But you've been tweeting us, so let's take a look.
First up, Sipom Tembu says enough is enough. We cannot go on like this. The president must engage with all political parties and organizations to solve this.
This one from Emerson says, problem is not men or women, the problem is the laws. These laws are empowered as an empowerment to criminals and people with evil hearts. Well, that's Emerson's take on it.
And TCC says, start conversations in our homes and promote dialogue amongst the men and discourage women abuse. Now, of course, there's been a poll as well that we're running on the service.
Yes, 219 votes in. We're asking you the question, does hashtag activism work? They call it slacktivism. So far, from the 219 votes we got in, 48% saying it's working and 52% are saying no. So it's very, very close.
Very close, but definitely those think it's not working in the slight majority. Sipom Tembu weighs in on this one as well, says, so to be honest with you, hashtag is just a song for those that doesn't work for them. It's working for those who are protected.
So says Sipho. This one from Katlecho says, it doesn't work. Hashtag activism is like a dog barking without teeth. I'm sorry to say this, but mob justice is the solution sometimes. Offenders are treated nice, says Katlecho. He wants radical change and, of course, activism.
Oh, and Andila Mayibonga, let's see what he says. He says, it doesn't help either, because these things continue like wildfire.
Those are all your comments. Please keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue during the course of the program. But right now, let's get down to business and take a look at the news headlines. 22-year-old Karabo Mukwena, whose burnt body was discovered in the veld north of Johannesburg, will be laid to rest at the West Park Cemetery this morning. 3 men are expected to appear in Protea Magistrates Court in connection with the killing of 2 more women in Soweto last weekend. And this SACP, the South African Communist Party, will have a national Imbizo that's aimed at finding solutions to the different challenges facing the country. Now, those are all your headlines, but before we get there, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front.
Thank you very much, Elvis. There's quite a lot happening in the world of sports. In fact, I'll be letting you know what's happening in the world of sports. We've got quite a lot lined up for you. If I get ahead of myself, this is what we have.
We had a very good week. We kept up the intensity from last week. We put the win behind us, and we just focused on what's needed to be done against the Brumbies.
The Southern Kings are the revelation of the latter stages of Super Rugby 2017 as they seek to make it 4 wins in a row when they meet the Brumbies this weekend.
And he keeps that streak alive.
Novak Djokovic is in his 11th straight quarterfinal here in Rome.
6-4, 6-4. Former world number one Novak Djokovic looks more like his old self as he dispatches Roberto Bautista Agut in straight sets in Rome. And soon to retire Germany and Bayern Munich captain Philipp Lahm is set to play his last match for his beloved Bayern this weekend. That's what we've got lined up for you for the sports. Back now to Elvis, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this hour. The two-day South African Communist Party's National Imbizo is currently underway in Midrand in Gauteng, and the second Deputy Secretary General, Solomon Paila, is currently addressing. Let's now go there live.
Government commitments at the moment. You'll be able to join part of the meeting later today or in the morning. You are now welcome, all of you. We recognize the leadership of the Alliance, the Secretary General, the General Secretary of the Communist Party, Comrade Blade Nzimande, members of the Central Committee of the SACP, our leagues, the Young Communist League, the leadership of the Young Communist League is also here. We recognize the leadership of the ANC, Secretary General Gwera Mantashe, and the ANC delegation, not yet complete, but they are here. He's leading that delegation. And the leadership of COSATU, the first Deputy President, Comrade James Jojo, is here, as well as the Secretary General, Comrade Begin Chalinchal. We also have the leadership of SANCO. Comrade Kagaza is leading this team from SANCO. I don't know whether it's my phone or someone's phone that is ringing. Is it mine? Sorry. My apologies for that. Of course, we recognize all other comrades that are here. Having done that, we felt it would be important just quickly to round up and get quick introductions. Comrade Mpo, if you can help with distributing the mics across the rows. There are mics here, so that we can know who's here. And then the rest, possibly those who are joining us late, will not have that opportunity to be introduced. But those who are here, we can quickly do that. Start from that row in front, the front row. Yeah.
Sheila Basel, Central Committee.
SACP.
SACP, thank you.
Thank you. The journalist occupies the front seat.
From the Young Communist League of South Africa, Mr. Secretary.
My name is James Tomaso, the chairperson of the SACP, Moses Mabila, Province KZN.
My name is Bonale Majoba, from the Transfer Department.
My name is Adrian Williams, I'm from the CC SACP.
Mbuya Nelaki, Umalang SACP Provincial Chairperson. Eunice Karim, Central Committee SACP.
Ikobe Ben Martins, Politburo SACP.
Ian Robertson, Stalwarts and Veterans.
Basil Randera, ANC and
Morning Bossi, Stalwarts and Veterans.
Mabuso Msiman, Stalwarts and Veterans.
Trevor Fowler, Stalwarts and Veterans.
Renee Furi, SACP Central Committee.
Hussein Rasul from Senate.
Sorry, what is SDG? I'm sorry. Can we get, what is SDG? Can we put not acronyms, the full name?
Strategic Dialogue Group.
Thank you very much.
The name is Venkat, board member, Business Leadership South Africa.
Government board member, Business Leadership South Africa.
That's very good.
Temba Mtembu, SACP Moses Mabeti, KZN, Secretary.
Chippy Olga, I'm from the Strategic Dialogue Group.
Professor Gengo, National Women's Secretary, NUM.
Benson Renzo, Professor Secretary, Western Cape.
Kaya Makata, SACP Masuki. Tukabatila, South ANC.
Aupapo ANC delegation led by Comrade Kwele Matashi.
What about that row?
Sorry, BDS, South Africa.
Boti Manamela, SACP Central Committee. States of the Silent Situation. I'm from the Arlington Post, South Africa. Paul Coman, staff member.
Colin Compella, South African Football Association.
Johannesburg against injustice.
Kate Pillay, Johannesburg Against Injustice.
We belong to the same organization, civil society.
Yulisa Bigi, same organization. Ivan Pillay, Star Wars and Webster.
Mohammed Kaji, our Socio-Economic Research Institute. Ibrahim Fakir, our Socio-Economic Research Institute.
David Rankoro, SACP Boksburg.
Joe Mwase, I'm from the steering committee of Save South Africa campaign.
Strategic Dialogue Group.
Dolina Svea from NMU.
Ewo Popani, SACP PC.
Serpa Moralana, Serpa like
SACP Gauteng Province.
Iku of the last NK National Cancer Steering Committee.
Beresoke Masaki.
Golden Gandhi, comrade journalist.
Isaac Kutsuri, Deputy National Secretary of the Young Communist League. Louis Shapwane, South African Football Association.
Tony Makanta, Secretary, SACP State.
Fili Mapulane, National Executive Committee member ANC.
Heading of Gain Equal Education.
Sabo Mutsepe, General Secretary of Equal Education.
Tusisi Young Communist League.
Jane Koza, ANC Youth LC. Precious Banga, Young Communist League.
Inyeko Jini, YCL State.
Richard Mumabulo, YCL State.
Yalile Babu Kosat.
Ziyisolosi Kosatu. Frida Ostresen Kosatu.
Solipepe Kosatu.
Enjipepe Kosatu.
Nomelanga Mabukela Kosatu. Nyameka Matanga Kosatu.
Ray Russen, also known as Comrade Jababu, stalwarts and veterans, also a member of Shosholoza Progressive Party.
No, Yala is South African. Is did that line do they've done? Okay, thank you very much. We really appreciate that. Now, comrades, I'm going to, the table. No.
Lucas Kagaza, member of the National Working Committee, South African National Civic Organization.
Gwede Mantashe, African National Congress.
Great in the Monday, SACP. Benita retired Orlando Pirates. The president of Orlando Pirates Supporters Club.
No, thank you very much. Thank you for your kind introductions, including comrade journalist. Comrade Ivan at the back, you want to sit with your stalwarts? You're okay then? Okay. It's my now singular pleasure, comrades, to ask the General Secretary of the Communist Party, Comrade Blade, to give us the keynote message to this Imbizo. No para, Comrade Blade. Yasha Ingoma, there's no crisis.
What now? Amandla. Thank you, Comrade Sol. Akuna ndawo la yokubeka amaphepha. Abe indaba. Bathathe sonke isikhathi sethu abafuna nokuyi-introduce. Okay. I'll see. Comrades, good morning to all of you. Let me recognize the SG of the ANC, Comrade Gwede. He's harassing me there that I can't speak because he hasn't seen my speech. Trying to remind me that I still account as a member of the National Executive Committee of the ANC. But we are independent formation, so this draft has been seen by the SACP at least. Deputy President Yekosatu, no General Secretary Slil Nabula, leadership Yesanko, and Nonke Njemakaban as having introduced yourselves. I must just start by saying this is not an SACP gathering, but it's an SACP convened gathering. Whose primary aim really is to just share on the challenges that we face broadly as a movement, but also the country, with a view to saying what is it that could be done. Originally, we had thought that what we would do with Imbizo like this would be to share about the forthcoming SACP Congress, but we decided that no, maybe it's better if we reflect on the challenges. I don't know what's happening with this thing. Yeah, and thank you very much for your attendance, as well as members of the media, for being here, led by Koli Mgambi, the media. He's the only one who introduced himself. We are meeting as our country, frankly, is facing many challenges, as well as those of us in our movement facing very serious challenges. As we meet, there seems to be escalation in gender-based violence in our country, within the context of growing levels of violence. We know that may not have been part of this agenda, but we can't pretend as if this is not happening. We will need to reflect on this, hopefully, come up with what is to be done. Because if really we do not stand up to confront this, we are faced with real prospects of decaying communities and social fabric of our society. We need to give hope to women, to children, and to our people as a whole. I'm also raising this thing of growing levels of violence, also because it's men in the main who are inflicting this violence. Let's not forget also, they don't inflict it only against women and children. They also inflict it against other men. That is why if you look at, I don't have the statistics with me, but prisons are overwhelmingly young black African men. So something has to be done by us as activists, as part of broader South African society. I think that it is important that as we open this important gathering, to acknowledge the massive social progress we have as a people achieved since our historical April 1994 democratic breakthrough. Millions of our people have gained access, human rights, workers' rights, political rights, socio-economic rights, despite the many challenges we still have. Millions of our people have gained access to housing, provided for free electricity, sanitation, including clean drinking water, social grants and indigent programs, as well as significantly increased access to education at all levels, amongst other things. Nevertheless, there is still a lot of work that is to be done. Our concern, one of our concerns as the SACP at the moment, is that unless we radically transform our economy, genuinely so, we run the risk of undoing these achievements. The ANC put it right. It said we must now enter a second, more radical phase of our democratic revolution. Also, in order to safeguard what one may have called the first phase. What was that phase about? Largely, it was about abolition of apartheid from our statutes, establishment of new democratic institutions, as well as some of these advances that we've made. But some of these are not sustainable if we do not change course in relation to our economy. Secondly, something that we'll come back to. We are not going to be able to drive a second, more radical phase unless we identify the immediate threats to that, something that I will come back to just now. Our major constraint, of course, remains the fact that there was no sufficient structural economic transformation to support our social redistribution programs on a sustainable basis. From the standpoint of the SACP, we think that what we now are calling for, a second, more radical phase, we should have started it immediately after 1994. But we squandered some opportunities. We have to reflect and accept that as a country. In other words, one of the things, as we discuss from this broad range of formations, what would be a minimum program around which we need to agree to really drive this, so that also radical sounding slogans become a reality rather than something that we talk about and very little happens. But broadly, one of the key challenges that we face, broadly as a movement, is that we are not going to succeed without embarking on a relentless struggle against our own internal weaknesses. That's very crucial, which we'll have to be open about. The ongoing struggle to advance, deepen, and defend our national democratic transformation has reached one of its more difficult and vulnerable moments. That's a fact. This is a message that is being conveyed to us daily by the SACP membership immediately, but also beyond that from other concerned structures outside of our party. Just looking at what's going on in our movement and in society. Whilst the sight of the challenges we face are both inside and outside government, but the weakest link has increasingly become concentrated within our own ANC-headed alliance at both national and subnational levels, and both inside and outside government. That's why SG, we become pleased, at least when the ANC stands up on things that are glaringly wrong. Like, we don't understand how do you re-employ a Brian Molefe at ESCOM. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. It's absurd. It's like we are taking perversion for normality. That's perverse. Can't allow perversion to be a normality. And who pays the price is the ANC ultimately, by the way. Now, we are not against Brian personally. We are against wrong things, irrespective of who is involved. Now, we hope that this gathering will contribute to some self-criticism with a view, what do we need to do to correct things? Now, I don't want to tell the story, Comrade Soli, of how one leader of the of the Chinese Communist Party, when it was a session for self-criticism for each individual, to state positive things and negative things, and then said, oh yeah, but can you allow me to self-criticize Gwede Mantashe as Blade is not. So that's why we've invited all of you, so that we don't self-criticize you on our behalf. You do it yourselves and for yourselves. The nub of the matter, I remember one discussion, Comrade Trevor, that I had with the late Comrade Chrisan around 1991, just after I'd been elected onto the Central Committee of the party. There was one thing that preoccupied Chris, saying, we must never, ever go the route of Kenya, for instance. He used to like to make that example. Revolutions that have gone wrong. And many of us, we're very proud that no, some of the things that are happening now in our country will never happen to us. We are very advanced. We've got a very active population. But when we begin to see some of those things, that gee whiz, we've been theorizing about these things, now we are living them, seeing them right in front of our eyes. The nub of the matter is that something like an alien substance has found its way into the ranks of our movement and government and is contaminating the DNA of our politics. There is my doctor there, he understands what I'm talking about when I'm talking about DNA. This includes the rise of private or personal interests that seek to displace the interests of the people as a whole and take control of our basic wealth and public resources. Linked with the problem, both organizationally and in government, is the corrupting and factionalizing influence of private corporations, including corporate capture, on sections of the leadership, public representatives, and the bureaucracy at all levels. This is our immediate enemy. We cannot confront and transform monopoly capital if you allow parasitic looters to mess up with your state. You will never be able to do that. You can't radically, in fact, part of radical economic transformation must be to defeat these parasitic networks that are eating on the state and our state-owned. You can't separate the two. It has to be part of it. That is why we have to come out of here and say, what can we as various organizations do together, obviously individually as well, but together, in order to confront this reality? Now, it is important that we state this. In looking at the challenges, for instance, confronting the ANC and the ANC-led government, we are not, as the SACP, doing so simply as neutral external observers. What? You are now telling us we mustn't talk about the ANC. Yes. Why are we talking about the ANC as the SACP or as COSATU, as if the ANC is a private property of certain people? These princes who get sworn into parliament, and after a few months, they act like in the inner circle of princes and princesses, goes back to ESCOM. An elite within the movement. We are told we mustn't talk about the ANC. Those of us who are members of the ANC, it's our African National Congress, proudly so. Though we are not very proud at the moment about how it looks. So, we have a claim to the ANC as communist, not because we own it, but because of the role that we played in building this organization. In fact, it may help our movement if we bring together a whole range of forces that are located both inside and outside the ANC who want to see our country make progress. That might be the ultimate muti that we need, yes. So that we do not become organizations that are playing a leading role in society but are inward looking. All of us, all of us. Now, the fact of the matter is that if the ANC didn't exist, we would not be where we are today. And one of the biggest achievements of the ANC was its ability to unite the African majority. Many countries, things go wrong because of ethnic and tribal warfares. If there is one biggest achievement of the ANC was actually to unite the African people. It's one of its biggest achievements as a foundation for building a united, non-racial South African nation. And it has to continue to play that role, but it can't do it if it is in this state. Another challenge that perhaps we have to admit, that's why I even challenge Comrade Solinos, our own comrades in the party, when they say we want to contest elections on our own, which is not a wrong thing to pose. But a shift from mass opposition politics to electoral politics tends to change the character of any organization. Any. Because some of the ills we are pointing at the ANC, they will no doubt also inflict the SACP if it goes that route. I'm not prejudging. What is to be done? What lessons do we need to learn in order that we actually do not go the same route? Were you to do that? But I'm asking that because it needs now to be said, what were the things that happened that should not have happened, and therefore what corrective measures do we need to put in place? That's the key question. That's the key question. Electoral politics, they are necessary, but they've got unintended consequences of changing the character of organizations. Also, access to power means access to resources. Also, in countries that have got high levels of unemployment and poverty like we do, accessing a government position, right from being a councillor to the top, is just about the only way you can change your life. Because usually the private sector is closed, there is no access. That lays the basis for corruption. What do we need to do learning from now and doing where we are and then moving forward, making sure that such things do not happen? You know, when I listened to snippets of what Bishop Mbumlwana was talking about yesterday on television, I didn't have much time. Comrade Sol, as you know, I'm celebrating my 90th birthday for my mother tomorrow. But I said, I don't know, SG, I was really very worried because I said, is this the rupture of the relationship between us as a movement and significant sections of the churches in this country who have all along been our allies? We cannot allow that to happen. Cannot allow that to happen. We have to correct that. The other thing that normally suffers once you shift to electoral politics is mass campaigning. Because now people become voters rather than active participants in changing their own circumstances. You approach them as voters, largely. In some instances, who are waiting for an elected organization to deliver to them, rather than being active participants. How do we rebuild this? To us as the SACP, this is one of the lessons we've learned. We've tried some campaigning. some of it very major campaigning post-1994. We had a big campaign on the transformation of the financial sector, achieved some important gains in terms of consumers. We managed to have an Umzansi account to bank the unbanked. It was as a result of that campaign. Regulation of the credit bureaus that were running amok. But what our campaign did not succeed to do was to transform the financial sector systemically, which is still an outstanding matter that we need. For instance, you can't have a country like South Africa that is dominated by 4 big banks. It's just abnormal totally. We need to diversify this sector to have cooperative banks, workers' banks, state banks, and so on. It's just, big banks are unable to deal with the needs of small business, for instance, by their very nature, because they play in the bigger stakes. We tried as the SACP, we had our own imperfections, but one lesson we've learned is that you do not only need state power, you need both state and people's power combined. That is one of the issues that we hope you will be able to reflect to here. Now, moving towards just ending these opening remarks, it's not a keynote address really, it's just remarks to try and set the tone. What are some of the key outcomes that perhaps could come out of this? It's up to you to determine that, but just sharing. Firstly, it would be very nice to come out of here agreeing on some kind of minimum program of action. We are independent organizations, and we mustn't compromise the independence of any formation or NGO that is here. We must continue with their programs. But on those things we agree upon, it would be good to act together. And through mass activism. You know, comrades, we've been discussing this in the party a little bit, not much, that courts have a very important role to play. We must not underestimate that. But courts do not change the balance of forces. It's mass activism and mass people's power on the ground that changes things. Our joint campaign with COSATU from the late 90s against privatization, that's what changed the balance of forces. We are not saying, don't misread us, that the courts are not important, but courts in the main are dispute resolution mechanisms. They don't change the balance of forces. Much as we, for instance, emphasize that we want a judicial commission of inquiry into state capture, but we are not going to defeat state capture only through the judicial commission. It will help to expose things, but in the end, it's combined mass action of the people of this country that will rescue us. So that is the one thing that at least perhaps we can agree on, a few things that we need to do together. And of course, invite other formations that are not here, that may share the same perspectives. By the way, in that process, we also want critical voices, even from inside here, our intellectuals, our researchers. Because the worst thing you can do is to be immune to criticism, or try to be immune or ignore criticism, instead of taking it as something that enriches you. Perhaps the second thing, how do we confront the systemic issues of poverty, unemployment, and inequality linked to the transformation of our economy, which I have already spoken about. What are some of the key things, key interventions that we can agree upon that really can help to drive building, for want of a better word, an inclusive economy that especially address the needs of the workers and the poor, who are the majority in this country? The third issue that perhaps we could say, what is it that needs to be done? We certainly have to escalate the fight against corruption and state capture. This thing is really threatening to devour everyone and who we are. You know, Ibo Mandaza, a friend of mine, some of you may know him from Zimbabwe, is an intellectual and academic. Put more Mas. I'm sure not absorb. But there is a paper that he has written, very nice one, about the Zimbabwean state at the moment. And he says there, once a state reaches a particular level in terms of tolerating corruption, it quickly then degenerates into a securocrat state. Because once it gets confronted or attempts are made to prevent that, it then uses other methods. That is why, as the SG has said, we agree with you. If we do not arrest these things, we will degenerate, of course, into a gangster state. There's no doubt about that. That is why this meeting is very important. The other matter that we may agree on certain actions is on the quality and efficiency of the public service. You know, there are certain things that we have tolerated that actually we shouldn't, that are causing problems. Why should almost everything in the state, either it's outsourced or it's turned into a tender? For instance, the ANC has taken many good resolutions on this score. For instance, to say, in-source school feeding into cooperatives, in localities, and so on. Why should it be a tender? Why should the maintenance of roads in our country, maybe with the partial exception of the highways, but many other roads, why should they be given by provinces and municipalities as tenders? Why don't we get those workers? Why don't we get workers who maintain roads employed as part of municipal staff? For example, serious part of alleviating poverty. It's estimated, for instance, that road maintenance can generate anything up to between 800,000 and 1 million full-time jobs. But the efficiency in the public service and the quality is very crucial. The last thing I want to say, perhaps I've already touched on it, but it's just to emphasize that. Strong independent organizations, when they come together on a common program of action, they can do wonders. Not sacrificing their independence, but working together on the things that they commonly agree upon. Once more, thank you very much. We are very pleased that you responded to our call. And let's hope that this is a start of important collaboration and conversations that we need as a movement and as a country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Comrade Blade. Can I check if Ubabumpumlwana has arrived? Not yet. And our immediate respondent has gone out. Can I give you 5 minutes stretch break? Yes, convenience break, 5-10 minutes, and then we're back.